Can I just ask one of the guys in the back just to shut the door, please?
We're ready. We're live.
All right, great. Welcome, everybody. I'm Glenn Pastor, chair of the Swampscott School Committee. Welcome to our regular session meeting agenda for Thursday, May 22nd at 6 p.m. You are at Swampscott High School in room B129. Call this meeting to order. If you are so able, please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you. We're not used to having this many people. I know it's a great day outside, and there's barbecues and sun and suntan lotion and stuff. In all seriousness, thank you for fighting with the weather. And we are going to start with For the Love of Learning.
So, Miss Barrett, you ready to take it away?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just share my screen. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. We're here tonight to talk about our French program at Swampscott High School. And we thought that tonight was a perfect opportunity to do it because we have a lot of our French exchange students over from Lyon in France. So can all the French exchange students, can you all wave?
Welcome.
We have 16 students over from Lyon,
Bienvenue. Here we go. Thank you.
And we also have our two French teachers. We have Madame Creux and Madame Denou. So the agenda for tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about the French program at the high school, and then I'm going to hand it over to some of my French students. I have Leora, who's going to talk about some of the activities we do in French class and our French club. I have Eliana Young, who is going to talk about our French club and our French Honor Society. I have Anna Metaxatos, who is going to talk about Concours Richelieu. And then I have Jack and Ava, who are going to talk about our Quebec trip. And then at the end, we can maybe ask one or two of the French exchange students to say what they are enjoying about the experience about being with us at the moment. So the French program that we have at the high school, obviously kids start at the middle school, but at the high school this year we are running French 2 through AP French, and I teach all sections of French at the high school. We offer ACP classes, honors, and AP classes, and we take a thematic approach. So we study the environment, we read novels, we study the Impressionists. So everything, all the grammar and the vocab that we teach is rooted in a theme. And in class, we focus on all 4 skills of listening, reading, speaking, and writing. In the French program, we're always working towards the AP themes. So they're up here in French. We have La vie contemporaine, which is contemporary life, La quête de soi, search for self, La famille et la communauté, family and community, Les défis mondiaux, world challenges, La science et la technologie, I think that speaks for itself, and l'esthétique, so beauty and art. So even when they come in French 2, these are the themes that we are researching in our French classes. So we are always preparing them for that highest level of French. And I'm going to hand over to Leora now, who's going to talk a little bit about the classes.
So I've been in Madame's classes since my freshman year. I'm now a senior. And as Madame was talking about before, we really do take a thematic approach. So it's not like the typical, you're not sitting there and doing grammar worksheets because you don't actually learn that way. You actually, in her classes, you actually practice everything. You're always challenged to only speak in French. So it's really an immersive experience. And we always watch the newest French music videos, are caught up on the newest French themes and politics, things like that. So not only is French, we're learning about the past. Like one of my favorite units was the Middle Ages, so we learned all about the Middle Ages in France. We're also learning all about the current and new happenings. We also watch French movies which make it really fun. I mean, we don't do that every class. That's like a special occasion. But yeah, watching those are also a great way to learn. We participate in Mani Musicale, which is an annual March Madness, but with French music. So again, immersed in the culture and the current happenings. This is kind of a poll to get to all of our students. We eat a lot of French food, and we learn about the past and the present in the French culture. And we do this through a variety of fun projects and activities. And the projects and activities we do are very creative and really tap into all aspects of life in French culture. Like I said, from the Middle Ages to Le Petit Prince, the famous novel, to a variety of different things. This year in AP French, one of the units we did was Impressionism. So we researched and learned all about the artists and also the techniques used, the different brush strokes. And our project was to create an Impressionist painting, and then we talked about it and described the techniques used, what artists were reflected in the paintings. So these are some of our AP student works here. Some of them were created with online editing. Mine was not that advanced, but these are some of the Impressionist pictures we did. And this was a trip we did in collaboration with the other art classes. French, we were able to come because there was an Impressionist exhibit at the MFA in April. And so we took a field trip there in the morning, and that was really cool. We did a French scavenger hunt, so we looked for the different things we had learned in the classroom and actually saw them in real life. There was a Van Gogh exhibit that was really amazing to see, and see that what we had learned on the whiteboard, on the smart board in real life at the museum. We do a lot of collaborative projects. So here are some pictures of our students in the past doing our quote-unquote speed dating activities. So another thing to practice conversational French, there's like a 1-minute timer, and there's different role plays you can do. For the Le Petit Prince, there were different assignments. You were different characters in the novel, and there was a prompt, and you had to discuss it. And we've done that with all the different themes throughout French. So that's always fun, and it gets really, people in my class at least, get really into it and really take on that character. And having done this, taking French throughout the years, you can really see how much you've progressed. I know I've seen my progress. In the beginning, it's very rigid, and now the conversations, you can really say whatever you want. Thanks to Miss Barrett's learning style, I've really been able to progress. Okay, so we also do fun activities, as I mentioned before. Here are some of our students in our Secret Santa and food tasting activities. And I mentioned Mani Musicale as well. And now I'd like to invite up our new Vice President of the French Club, Eliana, to talk about the French Club.
So the French Club meets after school about like once a month to do activities that include like food tastings, French food tastings like cheese and French chocolates. We also do various crafts like pumpkin painting in October, and we made masks for Mardi Gras. And yeah, just learn about, in cahoots to learn about French culture, just as like an extra commitment to learning French at school.
Yeah, it's super fun, and the room like really fills up. We had a meeting yesterday. Our meeting was yesterday, and the whole room was filled. Lots of cheese tastings. It was super fun. Okay,
Sorry. Yeah. Oh.
Okay, some things happened with our presentation, but don't worry. So let's talk talk a little bit about, we also have a French Honor Society, and this year we inducted 16 new members into the French Honor Society. Okay, Leora is obviously smarter than I, because she's figured this out. I don't know. Yes, there she is, yes, great. Let's go on to the French. Let's carry on. Yeah, that's it. So these are the 16 inductees that we had this year in the French Honor Society. So Eliana was inducted into the French Honor Society, and we have two other people here tonight. Ava and Jack were both inducted into the French Honor Society. Okay, Anna, would you like to come up and talk about the Concours Richelieu?
Hi, I'm Anna Metaxitos, and I was the representative from Swampscott High School for the Concours Richelieu, which is a French-speaking contest that's held by various Franco-American clubs in the area. And I overall thought it was a super interesting experience. It's a very cool way to learn and practice a language, I feel like. It's being, like, having the opportunity to apply my French language skills in that way, where I was, taking this topic and writing an essay about it basically, and then presenting it to a panel of judges. It was a really, really interesting way to use my skills and to apply them in a couple different ways. I think that there's learning grammar in school, like I think Leora brought up earlier, and that's a very traditional way to learn a language, but then there's also combining all these different skills. I took AP English Language here at Swampscott High School, so that was where I kind of learned how to put together an essay. But then now I'm also combining that with French class, because I had this prompt, and it was to write in French a 5-minute speech about how climate change is affecting Francophone countries. So, and that was very interesting for me as well, because what I'm actually going to college for next year is environmental science. So overall, I just really can't recommend it enough. It was a really, really interesting, very practical way to apply my language skills, and I definitely feel like it has made me better at public speaking overall. I remember there was, I actually got first place in the one that was in Salem, and then I moved on to the regional competition. I remember at the regional competition there was, I believe, a diplomat from Quebec who was there, and I just remember thinking it was so crazy to be, this high school student learning French, now interacting with people in the French-speaking world that seemed, very important, and yeah, I just can't recommend it enough. I thought it was an amazing experience.
And yeah, just to follow up on what Anna said, so we've competed in the Concours Richelieu for the past 3 years, and we have taken first prize every time. Yes. Yay. So now we're quickly going to talk about some trips at SHS. I'd like to ask Jack and Ava to come up to talk about our trip to Quebec City.
Hello. So every 2 years we take a trip to Quebec City, which is obviously in Canada. And we take a bus, which takes about 8 hours to get there, but it's definitely worth it. We only spend 3 days there, but we do get a lot done in that 3 days. For example, this year we did dog sledding, which was a super fun experience. It was really cold that day, but it was still fun nonetheless. We did ice skating, which was new. This was also new this year, and I think that was my favorite part personally. We did tubing, snow tubing. That was so fun. We had done that in freshman year too when I went to Quebec as well. And we also got a little bit of a chance to walk around and shop in Quebec, which was definitely a really cool experience because you got to see a lot of the little local shops and also the Canadian chains that don't exist here, which was also really cool. It was definitely really cool to see the French culture in Canada, because it's very different, or the Canadian French culture, I mean. It's very different to the French culture, so it was an interesting
Hi, everybody. I just thought it was really interesting to learn about the culture in class and then kind of translate that over when going on the trip, especially when visiting the older part of Quebec City and the newer part and seeing how that's really different. For those of you who don't know a lot about Quebec City, there's kind of an upper level and a lower level. And the lower level is mostly older stone buildings and really nice architecture, and the upper levels a lot newer and more modern. And my favorite parts were certainly like the dog sledding, because that's something we can't really do much around here. That's not as common. Definitely the tubing, and in general, just getting to know your classmates as well on the trip in general is pretty nice, because we're all like not too far from each other in the rooms, and we can just kind of talk a little bit and just be in Quebec together. And I really think that there was also another thing that we did, which I really liked, was we visited a maple syrup factory. It was a really authentic maple syrup factory, and it was like they taught us everything in French, and then we did these interesting things where you roll up maple syrup on a stick and you heat it up, and it's like almost like a taffy, which I've never seen before. So trip overall was really incredible to visit Quebec.
I also wanted to add, in freshman year, when we did the same trip, we stayed at the Hotel Frontenac, which is the most photographed hotel in the world. So that's pretty interesting. This year we stayed in another really great hotel, which it wasn't as beautiful as the Hotel Frontenac outside. It definitely brought the price down for the trip, because we did add some different activities in. And that hotel was fantastic. It had a pool, and it was really cool to be able to swim in the summer, in the winter.
Thank you. And then the last thing we were going to talk about was the French exchange. So tonight we do have some students staying with us from Lyon, France. We have 16 students in total, and one student has come back for the second time. In terms of hosting, we also have some students who are hosting for the second time as well, which is great. Leora, do you want to quickly talk about when you went on the French exchange last time to Lyon?
So during my sophomore year, I hosted a student from Lyon here for about a week. And you can see, I guess this is when they came during my sophomore year. And we did, I hope she had a great time. I think she had a great time. We had a lasting friendship. We still talk today. And then the following year, during my junior year, I visited her. So I stayed with her for about a week or so, and I went to her school. The schools in France, it was really cool to experience the classes there and how they're taught, because even the whole teaching style is different. So that was a great experience. Her family was super duper nice, and we traveled to different places nearby. And then afterwards, we said goodbye to our exchange students, and we went to Paris for a few days as a group. And that was, of course, incredible. We saw the Mona Lisa. We went to, I guess in Lyon, we went to a really famous chocolatier. I had some delicious, and we saw the whole process there. And then in Paris, we also went to Versailles. And for me, I challenged myself to speak only in French there. So with her family, I walked into her house, and I only spoke French. And that was a learning experience like no other. You really can't get that learning experience. And I think that really helped my French today. It's like pushing myself to only speak in French. It was a challenge at first, but definitely an experience of a lifetime, and I can't recommend it enough.
Thank you. So that was a very successful trip. Eliana went on that trip as well. Evelyn, who's not here tonight, she also went on that trip. But it is the best way for students to learn a language. So we really just wanted to tell you a little bit about what we do in French at the high school, and obviously I'm going to go on to talk about hopefully getting approval for a French exchange next year. But I'm very happy to have all the French students with us here in Swampscott, and I would like to thank all the Swampscott families who have come along tonight. I'd like to thank them as well for hosting the students, and I'd like to thank the two teachers in Lyon for helping me organize and put this together. And also a big thank you to Mr. Duyet, because he did an awesome class with the French exchange students today. I think you did, it was a quiz show, and they've recorded it, so you'll get to see it. And it was like the USA versus France quiz show. So it was a lot of fun. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And I'll just point out that Ms. Barrett was one of the teachers who was awarded help me out here, what would there, at senior nights, each senior chooses somebody who is particularly influential on them, and last night at the softball team, Ms. Barrett was one of them. So I just wanted to shout that out because these kids have lots of teachers, so the idea that we've got a star among us is great.
I think it's really special that you get them for all 4 years too. Like, what a great way to learn and build relationships, and I'm sure that helps everyone's.
And also to see the progress that they make, you know,
Right.
because when Leora started with me, she came in French 1, I skipped her to French 3, and to hear her speak French now, and Anna, when she competed in the competition, it really is amazing to see the progress that they make.
Yeah, it's impressive, and it sounds fun too.
Miguel?
Yeah, no, I love the presentation. Also love that students are learning another language. As someone who's trying to learn their fourth one, I can definitely relate to the struggle. So thank you, and definitely I hope you continue having fun, and also the exchange students also enjoy their time here.
John?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think it's, to echo what was previously, I think it's great that there's an opportunity for 4 years with one teacher. I actually had that opportunity myself, and it really was terrific. And not that I'm plugging anything, but I actually was a French tutor in college, so something to look forward to, right? But no, thank you so much for the presentation. It was great.
Great. Ms. Barrett, as always, this is just a phenomenal program you have. You know, every student who comes in here is just so engaged. Anna, I have to ask you a question. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the contest that you were part of? Yeah.
Someone pass
Hold on, just
Hold
a
on,
mic.
let me get a microphone. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Thank you. So the way it was structured is there are a bunch of different French American clubs in the area. So there's one that's in Salem, and so each club hosts a competition, and then the winners from those competitions go on to the regional competition. So in the weeks leading up to it, first of all, I had to present my speech to my whole French class. So I had to do my 5-minute speech about how climate change has affected Francophone countries. So I had to practice that. And then once I was there, then every contestant went up and presented their speech. And then in the weeks leading up to the contest, obviously, I was, doing edits and trying to make sure I got everything right and practicing everything. And then they give out the awards at that competition. So I believe there were 6 contestants, and then I got first place, so then I moved on to the regional competition in New Hampshire, where I got second place.
Wow,
I hope that
amazing.
explains like the...
That's very cool.
Okay.
Thank you. Again, thank you to everybody, to the parents who opened their hearts and homes. Thank you. This program couldn't work without you. To the students from abroad, from France, welcome. Hope the weather gets better today. Please, I hope you enjoy your experience, and welcome to Swampscott. Thank you for coming.
And know that most French kids don't come to meetings like
Right.
most of them come to meetings like this. This is not your typical American kid.
Right.
It's kind of mean, actually.
Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. Committee comment. Let's start with you, Suzanne.
I think that we'll probably touch on this later, but we had a great week.
Yes.
We had a great week because this committee fought really hard for our budget this year, and we were successful at town meeting. So I'm proud of us and the effort and everyone else that are, from our business administrator to superintendents to assistant superintendents, everyone. Just really, it was a group effort to have a united front for our school system. So that was really exciting to have that behind us now. So
Yes.
happy for that.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne. Ms. O'Connor, very excited for
I'm
this.
actually really excited that Anna is here because this is her second time presenting today. I sat in on the Innovation Pathways program today, and I have to say it was pretty spectacular, and I am really proud of this district. I am the parent of a kid who's in that program, and I confess that there have been times that I have thought, oh, this is a nice wood shop or, CAD design program. I didn't think much of it. But seeing the kids present today, and not just present the final outcome, but the process it took to get there, whether you guys were talking about the matrices that you, helped you make your design decisions, to your thought pathways, or I'm not sure what you call those bubble charts. It was really impressive, and it was really impressive to see a group of very different students taking advantage of this, and to see how all of the outcomes. It was, there were some kids who presented actual projects that they worked on, like Anna, who built a bat condo and for the Nature Conservancy here in town. And there were kids who built things for the bocce court, or a garden, that empty garden under the stairs. But then there were also a couple of kids who talked about their engineering internships, and it was really impressive. So I encourage everybody, I know Miguel was there today, I encourage everybody, if you have the opportunity, to really look into that. They filmed it, so it was long, it was 2 hours, but it was also part of their final project. They were all graded on it, so like an oral exam. You guys will all find out who the winner is, but honestly, I can't even imagine choosing who is the best in that group, because it was really, really impressive. So hats off to you. Second one today, right? Really great. I'm proud.
Great, thank you, Amy. Miguel?
I guess I will also add to that, since I was definitely there as well, and it was great to kind of see that you're gaining a lot of different skills that'll definitely help you once you either go to college or go into the workforce, since you had to come up with like your design process. You had to then figure out how you were going to market the item, if you were manufacturing it, how much it was going to cost you, how does it cost compared to other items in the market, and also just seeing the redesigns as you go along the way was also very interesting. I know for some of the interns that did internships, they definitely, I feel like, got thrown a little bit in the deep end, but hey, they learned a lot of great skills. I know one of them learned what everyone learned during the pandemic, which is how to work remotely with people and how to understand human gestures through a screen instead of in person, which hopefully you're not discouraged from the workforce. But it was great to kind of just see that those skills are like being offered to students at this stage, since it's definitely not something that was available when I was in school. So it was great to kind of see that we offer that.
Great, thank you, Miguel. John?
So just going back to town meeting for a second, also very happy with the outcome. And, for those who don't know, the school committee, all of us, the district leadership team, everyone was engaged from early on in the process to work towards that outcome the other night. So I think it was very gratifying to see a very positive outcome. And I do want to single out Glenn. I thought, he got on the floor to support the final item on the budget that was up for debate, and he made a great speech to support that, and thank you for that. You did a great job.
Thank you, appreciate that. I'm going to just hold my comments to committee chair comments. Reports and discussions.
All right, Ms. Barrett,
Okay, Mr. Callaghan.
you ready to go again? Yeah. All right.
Okay, so I'm here tonight to seek approval for a trip to France next year. So obviously we are hosting the French exchange students here in Swampscott at the moment, and our proposal is to return to France next April. So we would have to miss 2 days of school. We would leave on April the 15th, tax day. So we fly out of Boston on the Wednesday night. We arrive in Paris on the Thursday, And then we spend the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in Paris, and we visit the Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame. We take a boat trip down the Seine. We do a cooking class. And then on the Monday, we take the TGV train from Paris to Lyon. And when we get to Lyon, then the students will be met by their host families. And then for the rest of that week, we will go to school in Lyon, and the students will attend classes with their French correspondents. So much in the same way that their correspondents are going to classes here, we will do the same thing in Lyon. And then we will take a plane back from Lyon to Boston on the Saturday. So we'll be away for April break of next year. So the hope is to take 15 students on the trip. 15 is a perfect number with 2 chaperones. And as Leora talked about the previous exchange, you know, there are so many benefits. It's a great experience for the students. So yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions from anyone?
Nope, always excited, always exciting that this is happening.
Yeah.
Right.
I did see a memo that went around about a complication with the vote, or?
Yeah, just Ms. Kelly just had a little challenge with just the agenda, so we're going to put the vote off until the 12th.
Could we do a provisional vote just so that Ms. Barrett can move forward on it?
Yeah,
and-
that's a great idea,
Just
Amy.
because I know that
Great,
you're
thank
time
you.
sensitive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a deadline, yeah, of
Okay.
June 18th.
So we will vote formally on it. You don't have to come back. It's
Okay.
on June 12th, but I think that's a great idea. So again, it's not a true vote, but so we can allow Ms. Barrett to do her thing. Can someone just make a motion to approve the
I'll
trip?
make the motion to approve.
Great. Someone second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. It's unanimous.
you.
So again, that's a great idea, Amy, thank you. We'll officially vote on it the 12th, but you don't have to come back.
Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you, I
welcome.
appreciate it.
Right? Mr. Roby,
Hey, thanks for having me.
thanks for coming.
Great idea.
So I'm seeking approval for the band to go to Universal. Today was the grand opening for the new park at Universal. It's gonna be hard. We want to go on March 3rd to the 7th. It's kind of similar structure to when we went to Disney before. So we will be going March 3rd to the 7th. This is before spring break, so we run out all the, the touristy parts. Sorry. And so on the Tuesday, we would leave. That would be travel time, check in, and we have like a group dinner, check out our performance venue. Thursday or Friday, those are two, Thursday would either be the performance and Friday the workshop, or, vice versa. We're kind of at the mercy of Universal. We don't know that. And then they will have one day where they can just kind of relax and go to the park and enjoy, and then we come home the next day. So I'm looking forward to take around 40 students, hopefully more, but a minimum was 40. With 4 chaperones. And the cost on your sheet, it says $2,000. I want to keep it as low as possible.
Right.
In that $2,000, that includes everything that's needed, including meals, every single meal.
Wow.
When we went to Disney, it was airfare, chaperone cost, hotel, all the meals included, and all the activities and workshops and performances that we did. So
I bet you don't have a shortage of people who want to chaperone.
I know, it's kind of hard, it's kind of hard, but the kids really had a great time at Disney. 0 issues in terms of kids not behaving, out of line. I thought they had a great performance. If you've been at Disney Springs, we performed right on the stage there. And when we started, it was probably, I don't know, like roughly around 70 people. And then every time I turned around, when the piece ended, there was more and more and more. And it kind of felt like a home crowd. We had a lot of families from Swampscott travel. So it was awesome. There was at least probably, I don't know, Joe, maybe 10 or 12 families watching us, and it was amazing. So it was fantastic.
That's great. So just to dovetail what Amy said, do you need us to give any preliminary? Because the same thing, you don't have to come back, but we can't vote on it until the 12th.
Sure.
All right, so thank you. Can someone make a motion just to preliminarily approve the trip?
I'll make the motion.
Someone second, please.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Great, passes
Thank you.
unanimously. So again, you don't have to
Appreciate
come
it.
back right, at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So
All right.
So easy when they're like repeat trips.
Fuck them, get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Have a great trip, everybody.
I think I'm going to try to log in.
Safe travels back home.
Well, welcome to America. Come to a school committee meeting.
In the pouring rain.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
I just logged into the Zoom. Can you make it so that I can share my?
I think John is like
that's
the only
John.
one who can do it. Joe, can you help Martha?
Make her host.
Make her a host.
Make her host? We've only done it for I don't know how many years. I still can't figure it out. All right, that was very cool, I gotta say. That was very cool.
I hope they bribe them with like a good meal out or something.
Right, exactly, exactly. All right,
Like to come
Martha,
to
all
a
set?
meeting.
Yes. Hang on
Okay.
1 second.
Okay, so you're up.
And here's Miss Raymond with the State of Student Services.
Okay. I'm just going to get my screen.
While you're doing that, I will say, I went to the French club. I just missed the end of it, so the cheese was gone, all the cheese was gone. And they gave me a piece of chocolate that was from the chocolatier that they were saying was so amazing. So, of course, I put it on my counter, ran out to something, and it was gone. You know, the kids probably had no idea how good it was. They're probably complaining.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's not Hershey's.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I am back, right? State of Student Services. I am Martha Raymond, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. I forget who's asking me today, but I'm on, maybe it was you, Glenn. Going into my 24th year here in Swampscott, which is pretty long. That I've been here that long. I also live here in town. I have 4 kids who've been through the school district. So obviously, you know, I guess it's a long time that I've been here. Wow. And my background, just so people know, is I was a finance major, also a special education teacher. I've worked in a private special education approved school. I worked on a collaborative and then landed, fortunately, in Swampscott. And I'm also a board certified behavior analyst, just so kind of people have what my background is. And I also want to introduce Erin Wilson, who is our Associate Director of Special Education, also school psychologist. She's my teammate. I do want to, I always like to start the presentation just so people, you know, understand, you know, where, you know, what do we live? And it's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the federal law. We are also incredibly fortunate that Massachusetts also has its own version of that law, which is very helpful. And the law really is that we provide a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive setting. And a full inclusion setting in a public school is considered the least restrictive setting. I want to report out that last year I had shared, and we got a report at the beginning of this year. We go through tiered focused monitoring every 3 years, which is the Department of Ed coming in to ensure that we're being compliant with all the regulatory procedures in special education, but also in civil rights. We did come out with no corrective actions, which means we had 0 findings for the last review period. That is pretty hard to do.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Which is excellent. And, you know, I think it's a lot of the systems that we've been able to put into play. It's the first time, you know, and I've gone through them. When Mona Blumstein was here, I used to assist with her when we would go through this. And it's the first time that we've had the no corrective actions. Now you get, this 1 year is kind of our quiet year, I guess I would say. And then next year we move back into a self-study. And there's Group A standards and Group B standards. This past tiered focused monitoring cycle was in special education, but also civil rights. The next one is really, the primary is special education. So they'll come in and look at the records and review them on site too. So that's next year. The way we approach our positions in our office is to really ask ourselves these essential questions. I did not personally come up with this. I was very fortunate to be in a mentorship program with Dorsey Yearley, who was a former special education director in Wellesley, but also worked at Accept
collaborative. So we ask ourselves, what is best for the student? What is the student's entitlement? And what is the best allocation of district's resources? And all three of those questions are really important. You know, what is best for the student may not be what their entitlement is. And we also have to look, you know, there's one pie in the district. And we really have to make sure we are allocating our funds so that we are meeting the needs of the students.
Yeah.
So you can take a look at this graph. I like to, I think I pointed this out last year that, you know, prior to the pandemic, we were always just a little bit below the state. The state is in red and Swampscott is in blue. In terms of the number of students that we have with disabilities as a percentage of our whole population. Around the pandemic and after, you can see that we've edged over the state. And, you know, there's several reasons for that. You know, one, you know, is how soon did people open up, you know, and we did a pretty good job making sure we opened up. I think that was one factor. There's also mental health challenges we're dealing with, but it's also that investment, which I know I've talked about before, really investing in a multi-tiered system of supports. That's really critical to help with the COVID learning loss recovery. And we did have our ESSER funds that really allowed us to address that, and those we don't have anymore. I know we also heard that the Title I funding, and it's because, I'll have a next slide on that, is that there's like a threshold of our socioeconomic state, of, you know, our level, and we're kind of right below that level now, and so it's going to drop our funding in Title I. And our Title I funding, it does primarily go to our investment in tutors for literacy and math, which is part of our MTSS system. So without that front-end investment on intervention, you can see why that number has drifted up, because we do end up servicing those students. It's just we're servicing them in special education, which really means we've over-identified some students with specific learning disability who probably are not, but really experience COVID learning loss. And I would say in reading, but also a lot in mathematics. So that will recover. And I believe it's my next slide, which is, I can show this. You can see where the bubble is. You know, where, you know, what the number I'd like us to be around is 20%. You can see the bubbles in middle school, and that, like, you know, that really is, that's the age range that was primarily impacted.
Right.
And they were a little younger, obviously. That it was like third and fourth. Like, there were critical times that the pandemic hit that really did impact students. Our eighth grade current is going to move to high school. You're going to see that number kind of push a little bit over to high school now, because that group finally is moving up. So we know where it is. We know why. This is really great, though, and this is at the middle school. And what we did is I looked at the referrals in 22 and 23. You can kind of see how high they were, and they've dropped in half right in the last 2 years. Right. So that means we're coming out of that recovery period, which is great, out of the pandemic. And two things, you know, I really want to highlight Emily Zotto and Jason Kauschman at the middle school, that they've been really running a student support team process that has been led by the administrators, and I think that has really been key, which is our referral process. So teachers bring students forward that may be struggling in an academic area or social emotional learning, and they bring it to kind of their think tank, and we problem solve, right? Before you go to referral, no one's suspecting a disability, but they want to troubleshoot, hey, what's happening in reading, what's happening in math? You know, is there any type of extra support we can put into play? And you can see that's working. So we really want to take that model and really make sure we're doing it at the high school, but also at elementary. So that tells me that our number, it's going to improve, right? But once a student gets on an IEP, it's 3 years, right, before we reevaluate them again to determine, did they have a disability? That's why this early intervention is so critical, because you can come in, but also you can come off quickly too. So you don't have all the regulatory requirements that we have to go to once you move to special education. So this is good news. So I was really, really pleased to see that. And I do want to stress, the reason we know this information is we have our, obviously, student information system, Aspen, but we also pull that data out of Aspen and have it in spreadsheets that we analyze all the time. And so that's why we have this. Our ELL population is holding steady. I did want to report out that we did have large group of second graders who we were providing services to, and a lot of them tested out this year.
Oh, wow.
That's
Which
great.
our ELL coordinator, Nell Donato, reported to me. So I just want to highlight that I know we talk about the services, but they work. And, these students now are proficient in English, and they won't be pulled out of classes that now they'll be in their full-time general education classes. So I want to highlight what we do works. It is great to be in the new building. So the ELL teachers are, and it's actually not even ALL anymore, it's MLL. We want to move to multilingual learners, that they're all together supporting the students over there. It allows for better groupings and more efficient resources. Our low income, it's not that visible on our graph. You can kind of see a little bit it ticked down. It's a very tiny amount that we ticked down in our low socioeconomic percentage, but that does impact the Title I funding.
Right.
I did also read, and it's hard to tell. There's a lot changing at the federal government right now about what is going to happen. But Title III was one of the areas I worked in. We usually got about $18,000 or so per year to help fund some of our programming for our multilingual learners. I believe that's gone. That is completely not happening again. That was the information that I had. There was also some Title IV funding that I believe was professional development. I believe that is also gone, that those monies are removed. So, those are, and that just came out.
Do you know how much money that actually is?
The Title IV, I don't know, but the Title III was the one that I worked on, and last year about $17,000. Right now, that money is going to fund an ELL. Right, we have the money currently. It funds our ELL tutor, who's been working and pushes into the classrooms to support the students in learning their literacy when they're not being pulled out for services. So
Seems on brand for this government.
I think it's just going to be, I know there was a lot of, I think it's difficult sometimes, obviously I was at town meeting and I've been doing this a long time, that why is our budget process so unpredictable, and it's also timing, right? We just got that information, but we had to produce our budget in December and January. Well, now we've got new information and it comes late. And so that really makes our positions to figure out how, these students still are here. The service, what they need didn't change, but now we have a loss of funding. How are we going to do that? Doesn't mean we're not going to figure out something to do, but it makes it very unpredictable about how we're going to do it. And we're constantly having to reevaluate what are our resources and how are we going to allocate them.
I just think it's important that, the community knows.
Yeah.
We lost Title I for about $100,000, and now, Title III and Title IV for about $35,000.
Yeah.
This doesn't grow on trees when we're dealing with tax
No.
base. So
No, and this is the funding
Right.
that we're talking about that allows us to intervene on the front end. And what happens when you don't do that is it comes on, people go into referral and special education, and which is a far more strict, it's a good process, but you can see we're already over-identifying.
I know that this is really macro, but, with the talk about what's happening in Washington is that, that all of this dismantling is just going to mean that the money's going back to the states for distribution and stuff. Is there any talk amongst your peers that there's any truth to that happening? That for example, $18,000 or some version thereof would be coming in from the state.
That wasn't the information I got. I think that's gone.
Yeah.
The only thing I've thought is there might be less restrictions on how the money might be coming in block grants and then gets distributed out. We use our title funding for intervention services. It's staff, that's what we use it for. We use our federal IDEA money. We get about $600,000. Right now we use it all to fund out of district tuition, all of it. We get about $18,000 for early childhood. We use that to fund some clinical work that we do in the preschool with our students, and also to fund one of our stipends for the director. So I did hear maybe that money might be lumped together now. I don't know what that, but you don't know. that's a lot of money that is not very predictable for us to kind of know what are the what's going to be tied to it? I don't know. So we'll see. But we do rely on it. This is just some information around our, we look at our MCAS data, and this is students with disabilities. Kind of helps us just know, how are we doing? This was information from the pandemic. I do, and now, how are students doing? I'm super incredibly proud that our students did not experience any loss, our students with disabilities, because we brought them to school, right? But who did? Our general education students. They really did. We're in a path forward from the state. It means that we are where we should be, but we still have room to grow for sure, but we're not in recovery. We're in recovery in one area in ELA, in math, but we know that there's a new curriculum that we are investing in. I'm incredibly excited to work with Sarah Kent when she comes. These are areas where she and I will work very closely on, because as general education goes, so does special education. So we know where we have strengths, but we know where we have weaknesses, and we're continuing to address them. So every year, and I will say in Department of Ed, and I'm guessing maybe it comes a little bit from the federal government, how they decide to grade us in a rubric, it changes every year, and you're not told in advance what the rubric is, which is not always the best way to teach, so you don't know. So this year, it's a whole different system, but we scored an 88%, which meets the requirements, which is good. But it allows me also to look at, okay, well, where are my levers? Where do we want to push? So in performance, we had 17 out of 20 points. Compliance, 15 out of 16. And other considerations, 4 out of 5. That's going to be our PRS complaints. PRS complaints, if you get between 1 and 5 in 2020, the year they evaluate us is not this year, it's the previous year. And we had 4, so that kept us. PRS is the problem resolution systems. It is where if someone is upset about something that is happening in the district, they may go and file a complaint. It's a good process because it does make, I feel like it's a research, when we get one, it's and I probably am the only person probably who would say this, I like doing these and helping people with them because they're very much legal. What are the facts? Like, what did we do? Was there anything that we did wrong here? And then you make a corrective action, and you can do the corrective action immediately. You don't have to wait for the state to tell us how to do the corrective action. So I do like helping people with them because they're not about feelings. They're about the facts. And we get better. Like when something happens and we make a mistake or something doesn't go, we get better as a district, and I appreciate that. So here are the things actually that we scored well on. 86% of our students, and this is students with disabilities, graduate with a regular high school diploma. 10% of children with disabilities dropped out. I know that seems really high, 10%, but if you remember, at high school it could be 2, and that would be 10%, because there might only be 20 students in IEPs at that level. Our reading proficiency with 8th grade students with disabilities they thought that was a strength. Our 4th grade, and I believe that was math, right? And math was considered a strength. And our 12% proficiency with 8th grade with disabilities in math was also a strength. It's interesting that 12%, you're like, how could that be a strength? But that is just, you can see that the entire state performs less well in math than they do in reading. So that, again, is not just a students with disabilities issue. That is actually an issue that we have across the state. I still think that is a lot of the COVID piece. There were, math is that one curriculum that spirals up top of each other. And so we're still kind of in recovery there, but we're in keeping with where the state is there. We have our students in full inclusion settings, 67%. That's where we want to be. Higher if we can, but that is a good percentage. Our pre-K students, we educate with students with out disabilities, so that is a strength. We have go ahead.
So if we're working towards, especially post-COVID, at bringing the number of students down, and that sort of, I'm not going to speak to this as well as you do, but the idea that COVID learning loss and the special education is more intertwined than not. As we get further away from that, does that mean, or do you predict that some of the kids who are going to be still in that program have higher need because they weren't the kids sort of on the edge, but they're the kids who just have higher need. Let me see, how do I get here? So the likelihood of their being fully integrated would be lower. So doesn't it almost work in the inverse?
I think it depends. I think math is our harder one to recover from. I mean, we do find that we're needing more small group instructional math, especially at the middle school, high school levels, because it's really hard to go back and recover. You know, it's hard to be in Algebra 2 if you're still trying to master things that you missed in 6th grade. I could even bring up my own daughter. I remember at one point she didn't know what an improper fraction was. I'm like, that must have been during 6th grade. And I'm like, you know, and you can see like just units that you didn't get. And, you know, so math to me is the real harder one. You know, the recovery is gonna be long because that number of students we have, like likely, you know, they might tear off at the next 3-year evaluation or at their next 6-year one. But the important part is that what I showed you before, the referrals are dropping, right? So that means that, you know, we're moving out of that. But that group, I will say, to me, the 8th grade group is one that we know. Math is a real, difficulty for them. And not because they're not math students or can't do math, but the timing of the pandemic hit them. But we're really actively planning for that for 9th grade next year. We're really investing in that.
I would also say to that point.
And you are this year too.
You might not remember this, but when they were in 5th grade, we presented their MCAS scores to everybody, and everybody was, you know, sort of alarmed, but it was because they got hit really hard. And so we're slowly but surely recovering and making our way back here.
And the good news is that we take this data and it's real and we do things with it. Yes. We don't just admire it. Like, we know we have a problem and we're going to address it. So that's important. No disproportionality, race, ethnicity in suspension and expulsions with students with disability or disability category either. I'm very proud of that. This district does not occasionally we're using suspension for serious things, but it is not our primary mode of discipline. And it also is not a teaching tool, right? You know, we know every suspension, every type of anything we do on that end has to be paired with a teaching procedure. And I will say our district has moved really in that direction. Maintenance of effort, I think this is really interesting again, because this kind of reminds me of budgeting process that, you know, I have the grant when I do write the IDEA grant for the $600,000, there's a portion of it that, you know, I work with Ms. Stella on for maintenance of effort, which shows you have to show that you spent the same level or more in this next year as you did in the previous year, or you will not get the same amount of money coming from the federal government because you cannot use that money to replace. So say they decide to cut the budget. This is why special ed's hard. You can't take that grant and, you know, and use that to cover what we didn't get to fund what we need to do. It has to be supplemental. So, you know, I'm not sure. You know, people are always looking, we need to cut the budget. We need to do it. But you know, this is one area where we have to show that we are actually doing the same or better every year for our students with disabilities. It's not, you know, hard to prove that. You know, there's only extraordinary times where that might not happen. It would be if, for instance, we had a student in a very high level, high cost residential placement and say they moved. There's ways for us to then speak to the state to say, hey, we have an extraordinary circumstance. That's why we're not meeting maintenance of effort. But I do think for people who don't quite understand the budgeting process in special education, it's something for them to understand.
I think we should definitely include that in the budget process next
Yes.
year.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've ever realized that.
Yeah, no, it's a requirement. It struck me more because, wow, everyone's saying cut. Well, we have to show actually that we don't do that.
Right.
That we, you know, we are spending the same level for our students with disabilities this year and the next year.
And I would imagine if it's surprising for us, it would be shocking for the finance committee to hear
that.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick point, you know, Martha was mentioning this to me, and I'm like you, I lived the world, I had no idea. I definitely think this is something, especially at the financial summit, which we are gonna have.
Good.
This is something that's real important for you to bring up.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is how it is, this is a rule.
Right.
A law.
And talk about that.
That we have to do. All right, the next page, these are our areas of need. So we, where do we need to focus? Where do we not, what got our points down a little bit? Our fourth grade for reading, and both our high school and in reading and in math, which I was a little surprised about. But it does tell us that, there's work to do there. I think, again, I think there's that investment in, multi-tiered systems of sports is still critical, but both in reading and in math, even at the high school level. So I know we have our content, math, you're gonna algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calc, or maybe it'll be in calculus. But there still may need to be some spiraled back leaving in of missed topics for those students. And the idea of a multi-tiered systems of sports, it can happen in core instruction, which is during the actual, algebra 1 class, let's say. But the idea of MTSS is that 80% of the students' needs are met in the core instruction, 15% are met with a little bit more instruction, which is outside of that time period, and about 5% are met by even doubling that, so giving them even more time out. The high school does have a schedule that allows us to do that. There is some math supports that are in play, but not English at the moment, not reading. And so I think this data kind of shows us, well, hey, we might need to do that and still maintain some of those skill-based instructional.
How does this stand up against kids without disabilities?
Well, they're going to be higher for sure. That are, right now when we look at MCAS, the goal for us would be at 25% or higher for students with disabilities that meet or exceeds. That's what this is, right? And we're not, right? So we are in reading the high school. The math is always lower. When I look at our neighboring towns, the ones that we compare are comparables. They're right where we are. But if I look at towns with less, Linfield, for example, there is definitely that socioeconomic will hit that number too. But our goal is to get us above that.
I just wonder, how does that compare with where we might see weaknesses in our district that we're working on for general ed?
Right.
Yeah. Well,
It is as general ed goes, so special ed, so we follow them, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you just sort of imagine it looks like this.
Like,
just
if
a
you're
little
not
higher.
strong in math and general ed, you're not going to be strong in math and special ed.
Right.
Correct.
I would say two quick things that might change this in the next couple of years. The one is that since this 8th grade, or the high school students and even the 8th grade, we had just recently started the MTS system in 5th and 6th grade in enrichment block, where, I don't know if everybody remembers every presentation we've done here, but I think we added an additional 142 hours of math within the first 2 years of middle school. So that is going to move the needle, we hope, and it's leveled. Now, not every special education student has access, so they might have a pull-out reading class during that time or something like that, but it might keep the numbers down, and it's just interesting to keep an eye on. The other thing that Martha and I have talked about with the MCAS data, and I've always appreciated that everybody here is sort of, MCAS is one data point. I don't know if it's always the best, we have kids who finish in 20 minutes. They just don't want to do it, or they fall asleep, so it's interesting to see the kids who give effort versus the kids just who just don't want to do it. So I think it's tough so we start tracking the kids we're tracking their stop time, because it's important for Martha to know and for me to know sort of who gave their best effort and failed versus who just didn't try and failed. So.
Are you seeing, because, the requirement is now gone, are you seeing different attitudes, different numbers regarding MCAS testing?
Well, I don't think we know yet because it just happened, but I do tie them to the iReady score. So we're really lucky that we have a district-wide, curriculum measure, and they do tie out to that.
Right.
So that help, and I use both, right? MCAS and iReady are not, they are good progress monitoring tools for individual students, but again, I think what Mr. Kalshman says is totally true. They're one point in time. If I had a bad day today, my score may not be reflective of what I know.
Right.
But they are helpful for the general trend.
Right.
Right. And so that's kind of what these scores are about. Can we move the needle up? I do also think that we're small districts, so there can be cohort changes.
Right.
And so, that to me, I'm always really mindful of. I know the 8th grade right now, I'm monitoring them. We all are monitoring them.
Right.
And we're doing something about it in 9th grade. We are completely revamping kind of how we're going to be programming for them in 9th grade, which I'm really excited about.
Right.
But that to me is a little bit more what I use it for.
Right.
It will be interesting though to see, I would say it would really only be the high school. I'd be more, is there a little less, well, you still can get the scholarship though. So,
Right.
I mean, I definitely have encouraged mine to make sure they're taking it seriously, right? Because that's a big, any money you can get towards college is really helpful. So maybe that will help still to make sure kids are really putting forth their best effort. Because it is a tool that helps us figure out, do we need to invest in a new curriculum? Do we need more professional development? Or what do the kids need? It is one measure. So it is one though, and it's nice we have multiple measures.
Yeah.
And we have teacher reporting too, which is also critical. Because teachers see even a different side of what's happening in their classrooms. All of the information is critical. Indicator 14 is just I'm not as concerned about that. This is just where we send out surveys to our postgrads, and this is just our response rate isn't great, and we do try different things. I don't know what else I can do to entice them to tell me how they're doing in 2 years and 2 years out. But we do collect the data. We do have their contact information. It's just, hey, did they reply to the survey about what they're doing now? And then the problem resolution system, we had 4 findings in 2023, 2024. I know the last time I reported this out, we had 0. So what happens, it's a system, and it makes us better. So I'm fine with it, and I'm happy to be the helper in the district to do those. What are our cost drivers? I think, again, like the out-of-district tuition went up 3.67. Okay, that was fairly reasonable, I think. But then we found out our collaborative was going up 8. Right, and we didn't find that out until after the budget went in. So,
And that was after the 14%?
well, the collaboratives have always stayed low. That's the 3.5. I will show you my graph of the cost of out of district. You can see the 14 the year it happened.
Didn't we have a
Yeah,
huge?
like there was a huge reset.
In the assessment was last year. That was 100,000. This year is just the tuitions actually. So now that's even an assessment is actually easier, right? It's a
The
one-time
assessment was
cost.
for the building.
Yes,
Yeah.
but now the tuition's increased by 8% for the collaborative. So that's built in, right, year to year to year now. So actually an assessment is easier for us financially than actually a baked in tuition. And we didn't know that either, so I came late. Transportation costs vary. I think this is the other issue probably at the summit I can talk about. When we are very fortunate, we belong to SEAM Collaborative, in terms of ease for me to be able to request transportation for our out-of-district students, at least I have one vendor that we go to. And then they look and they have different towns who are all coming into it, and they'll group kids together. I will not know, though, and the cost is based upon the groupings.
Right.
I do not know, I don't get that information because that information is private, right? I'm not allowed to know who that student is in the other district. So the only way I know is when I get the bill.
Right.
So when the bill comes in, I can be like, oh, this one must be a
So
cost
they don't
share.
even tell you ahead of time,
No.
oh, good, we've got good news for you?
No. So, and it shifts. So one month, it's, it's $350 for, say, if I have one run, it's $350, right? One run, one day. The next time, it could be down to half of that. Then it goes back up again because that student must have left, or there's a problem on the run. The 2 kids don't get along. Like, these are things that happen. So if you ask me to predict what it's going to be, really hard, the best way I can do it is just look at last year's costs, right? That's, you have to look at the past to say, hey, what is the future going to look like? I will say we do have some families through settlement agreements who do transport their students too. They prefer to do that. I get it. It's more predictable. I mean, if anyone's traveled behind a bus or a van, you kind of know it's not as quickly, it doesn't get to your school as quickly as it would if you were driving. And so I understand that too. So we do have some ways that we support families to transport their children too. In district has been pretty stable.
Just because they're transporting them doesn't mean that we still pay for that.
We pay for that, yes. Yeah, the law, you can have there's mileage reimbursement, which actually is up and back that you do, but also we can have settlement agreements for that as well. It's a cost, you want kids to get to school safely, and you want them there on time. And, and that is the regulation. We also do transport students who are experiencing homelessness or in foster care, and those are total unknowns. We have no idea when they would happen. And it was a little bit higher this year, too. And for that, I had to actually typically we use our one vendor, North Reading Transportation. I had some situations where they couldn't provide it, and I had to go out into the all the vendor pools that we have of people who provide this transportation. I even called other districts to ask them who they're using, and that cost goes higher, right? Because we have a contract with NRT for what the rate is, and when you go out of that, I'm just at the whatever the bid is of who's giving it to me. So that can go upwards to $450 a day. Clinical services, I will say, one great thing that happened this year. I've worked with Peabody and I've worked with Lynn Public Schools and Marblehead, but we had some low incidence evaluations we needed, and we needed a teacher of the deaf or hard of hearing, and we also needed a vision. Usually we would contract with North Shore Consortium, but again, there is a complete shortage of vision specialists and orientation and mobility specialists. I was quoted at private placements, $3,000 for one evaluation. A Peabody shared their, what we pay for, but they shared their teacher of the deaf, and I cut a evaluation down to $1,000, right? Because they're only charging me with the cost of their, they had somebody who could come out and do it, and then I will pay Peabody. Same with Lynn Public Schools. They shared their vision specialist with us. It's really nice that I've got colleagues and peers in the neighboring towns. We work really closely together. We help each other out. We've been looking at tuitioning in some students. Sometimes larger districts, Lynn, Salem, might have, they have a bigger cohort of programming than we do, and I've been able to work with them too for students that we might have in Swampscott that don't need a private or even a collaborative placement, but just need a different program, and we just don't have a big enough cohort. And so I really think our collaboration is really helping all sides. And Nahant too, obviously work closely with Nahant. Obviously, other costs, educational materials, assistive and alternative AAC devices, which are assistive and augmentative evaluations that we do in communications. We have many of our students who might be nonverbal, may have iPads and software, and we do consult with a speech pathologist from EdTech who will come out and help us with the evaluations, but also set up the software and set up the iPads for that too. That actually is now on the IEP. They have to consider that for all students if they may need that. It is an amazing tool. So, but again, these are all, when you think about, hey, why are special education costs rising? Well, there's all these new things that we're able to do with technology and what we've learned with how the brain works, but there's a cost with it.
Right.
And so our team, our speech pathologists and our special educators are becoming very skilled in utilizing their AAC in speech, SGDs, speech-generated devices. Translations, interpreters. I'm really proud of our district. I just was at another meeting on the North Shore where people were asking about, well, do you do translations for this? And we do. We do use, obviously, Parent Square is amazing. It was great that LaTanya McInnes brought that here. Automatic translation, so easy for me to communicate now with families. But for our legal documents that we're using, evaluations, an academic evaluation, we do send those out so that they are translated properly. We do not use Google Translate for those. It just isn't something you can do. We are spending $20,000 to $30,000 a year, and that will fluctuate a little bit. Depends. I never know which student might be moving in that we might have to evaluate and need the translation, but we do it. So I'm proud of our district that we meet our commitment there. Continue to have increased need for behavioral sports. I would say elementary is maybe the largest area that we have, and we're investing there. And the tier 1 support, so as I said, I'm really excited to work with Sarah Kent to really focus on that core instruction.
Can I just ask a question about the behavioral?
Sure.
Is that typical of elementary, or are we seeing a bump?
I would say that the bump that we had after COVID dropped. I feel like our kindergartners came in a much better last 2 years, much better prepared socially. They were really isolated, when they, during the pandemic, it was really hard for them to understand group think and waiting and taking turns. But that's improved. But we do have, some students with emotional regulation. And usually, students with, we know mental health is increased, right? The needs of our students. At the younger age, it presents more acting out. And that's what it looks like. So, at the older age, it's a little more internalizing, but, a student who's anxious, when they're young, it tends to look like running away behavior or acting out behavior. And so that might be it. I definitely also think that the technology piece is really tough. The immediate gratification that this device brings you out in the world, it makes it really hard for kids to have persistence, resilience, and patience when you're entertained at all times of the day. Things that taught that piece of it, how to persist and how to, have effort, is kind of limited. So it's not really their fault because it's the experiences that they're having. When you go to the doctor's office and you used to have to wait and do a boring highlights, and I'm probably dating myself so much there, but you did those and they were super boring. But now they're all playing games. I mean, I've been out to dinner and seen families and everybody's got on headphones and they're all on their iPads, at dinner, and it might make it so that you can go to a nicer place, but there is something that then they don't when they get into school. One teacher, 20 kids, they don't know what to do with themselves when their needs aren't met immediately. So it's not really their fault that they're coming in like that, but now it's just teaching. We just have to teach them that how to be patient, how to listen to your peer, how to know that you have to wait for your needs to be met. I mean, these are all things that a lot of times the littles had practice with, but the new world that we live in just doesn't allow as many opportunities for it. So anyway, that's kind of my take on it. So we teach them and they learn. So I think that part's really important. All right, here's the out-of-district tuition. You can kind of see, I have it from FY13. We were hovering around, under 2 million. Then you hit the pandemic, right? FY20, you can see. And we had kids go out of district that year that probably would not have, but we weren't open. And even the private, there was nothing we could do. So we probably had 4 or 5 kids go out that probably would not have as soon. And that was not unique to Swampscott. But then you can see FY24, there it is, 14%, that massive bump up. You can see that, that was when our costs just skyrocketed after FY23. I did put in, FY25, that 1220 is what I predicted. And now FY25 projected is kind of where I'm almost positive we're going to land. You can see we're a tiny bit lower than what I projected. That's good. FY26, we are right on target. That's, and we're really early in the year. So, at least we're not over what I projected, but we are tight. So it's coming in right where, and that's kind of where I've said, here's what the, some of the likelies are coming true. Usually not all of them do, but we're coming in pretty tight. The next page kind of shows, which I think is interesting. You can see it's really the cost of the programs, because it's not like our, we hovered a little below around 27 FY13, around 27 kids out of district, but no residential. You can see that. The number of students in residential programs is very small. But those are very costly programs, but that's bumped up a little bit. Bumping from 0 to even, 4 or 5, that's that blue section. Next year, we have a greater percentage in private days versus collaboratives, which is a little more costly, although the collaborative cost is pretty equivalent to, Hopeful Journeys, which is a private day program for students with autism, and the Kevin O'Grady School. They're neck and neck. So it's not a savings for us at this point. But you can see it's not the number, not really the number of students, it's the cost. Right. And we know that because it's more costly to run our programs, right? And imagine running a residential program, so that's where it's going.
So does it make sense to remain part of the collaborative?
Yes, because, you look at the collaborative as a community, and so you're then educated within the, the North Shore. It's nice to be, for families even to make connections with other families. So I do think collaborative is one of our first choices, but there are some good private day and residential programs out there too. I mean, out of district is never a want, it's a need. So I know you know, and that's the truth. Everybody wants their child to be successful in school. That's what they want. So, you know, when you do need to do it, it's great that there are good programs. And we are in the North Shore. There are good programs around us. And we compete with them, which is a good thing, makes us better. But that is, you know, it is good that we are surrounded by some. I talked about special education, so in transportation, I think we know those costs are there. Challenges, you know, the emotional disabilities, health issues, school avoidance, those are still there, and very intractable, I will say. Mental health issues tend to go up and down. The school avoidant issues and the anxiety piece are far more prevalent, you know, in the last 5 years, too. And, you know, and they're not a lot, you know, we work very hard to help with that. We're really fortunate that the collaborative consortium has a program called Connections, where we do spend $27,000 a year, but that gives us access to a social worker who's not from the school, right, which is kind of nice for a family, and they'll go into the house and work with a family, help them get connected to services, and at any given time, I'm allowed to give them 3 cases. And we've been doing that. And I really feel like that has been, they told me that we're one of the districts that utilizes them the most, but I'm glad, because I feel like that is another service we can provide. And I think it does give the family, it's nice that someone not coming from your child's school, but someone, you know, coming in from another angle.
Different voice.
Yeah.
Helps.
So that's been helpful.
That is to get the kids back into school.
Yes. Well, and also to kind of look at, hey, what's going on? How can I help? Like to me, it's having someone else, you know, when you live it, like sometimes it's hard to see, you know, what are some changes I can make, little changes even. It's really hard. We all know that. Like, I do this for a living, really hard to practice it in your house. So, you know, it's always nice to have someone else give you an outside view. So I do think that has been a very supportive service.
And so that's not necessarily something we're paying extra for, that's just part of being the collaborative.
No, we do pay extra.
Yeah,
It's a choice.
27,000.
I think it's worth it. I mean, when you think about what, you know, 27,000, and I could have 3 families at a given time being supported through that, and the goal is to get them back into school and to support them. I 100%, you know, I need kids to come to school, right? I need them to feel okay. And if that is
What's the average time they spend with each family?
You know, it varies. Sometimes it's very short. Sometimes families refuse it. Sometimes families do have it for a long time, and it really does help because that provider is navigating with a lot of other providers and helping the family coordinate. They also can help them apply to DMH, DDS services, Department of Developmental Disabilities. These aren't easy things to do. Mass health. Like, none of this is easy for families to navigate, and it's kind of nice for someone to come in who has really great experience to do that, and they're doing it at home with them. So I think it's a great service to have, and we've utilized it.
How does that tie in with the goals set by the state in terms of lowering our student absenteeism? Is that something that can be used? I mean, I would imagine that it's pretty stretched then.
Our absenteeism at like middle school, I mean, middle school is actually really good. Their absenteeism is good. Elementary is actually pretty good too. High school is probably our biggest one that we need to get on top of. But even where we are compared to the state, we're not anywhere near one of the higher risk districts. These are more just unique cases.
Right.
But that support, I think, has been really helpful.
I mean, it sounds it, because it really does become yes, it's the student, but it becomes a family issue.
Yeah, well, there's all,
They need help.
Well, when you look at a little one, little or big one, the behavior change is usually the people surrounding them before you get the behavior change in the child. Because that's the only thing I can control. Like, we can control our responses, we can control what we do to set them up for success. But that's how you get that behavior change for students. I mean, it is definitely a newer phenomenon, that is newer, I mean, we've been struggling with it probably 5 years, but it is very I wouldn't say like anyone's figured it out yet. And it can be intractable, which, which is why, and when I was saying invest in early intervention, like 27,000 is not even, there is no out-of-district placement that costs that.
Yeah.
And nobody wants the out-of-district placement. That is a great investment to help, anything we can do to help get, bring this child to a level where they can get back into school. I talked about the referrals, middle school, and that's such a great goal. Also, I would say Erin does a lot of work with private. Through the pandemic, we were inundated with private school referrals. So these are students who don't get into your count, right? But we evaluate, we meet every year. That improved this year. We still have them, but it really, really improved.
Can you talk about that a little more? Like, what is that?
So that would be students who attend a private school, Hillel, Tower, St. John's Prep, North Shore Christian, that their parent may refer them for an evaluation, but they live in Swampscott, and we do complete the evaluation. Student might be eligible or not eligible. We would write an IEP. Most of the time, we won't service them because they're not going to enroll, but we still meet with the family every year with the team from whatever school they're in. Sometimes families came back to Swampscott, but but it's time. You have 4 different providers.
Came back
Yeah.
to the new elementary school this
They
year.
did do that.
A lot.
Oh,
Some of it was pandemic related, like these were kids probably who had COVID learning loss and, but to me, it's the funding piece, like it's a requirement to do it, but they don't count, they are not measured in our child count.
I think we did 30 to 35 last year.
That was last
This year is much less.
Much lower.
Probably around 15.
and when they come back, are they mostly special education students? Like, are they,
They're being
If they're evaluated and eligible, yes.
If they are found out.
well, but I would imagine that there are a lot of kids who are evaluated who are not.
Depends.
Yes.
Yeah,
I could get the data for you
Yeah.
from last
Yeah.
year, but yes, but then there's also a lot of students who may have been found eligible and then are attending private schools, but we have
Continue
to
to
keep
monitor.
up and monitor and meet with the families. And if questions come up, oftentimes it becomes our responsibility to reevaluate or to look at a different concern and evaluate that specific piece of it. So
It's so interesting because you're writing an IEP, but
aren't going to provide the service.
you're not going to provide the service, nor can you guarantee that the school's going to provide the service.
No, they don't.
They don't.
They're not.
Yeah,
No.
But you're not held liable for that.
No.
no, and I always,
But they still have all the rights in procedures and regulatory requirements. We have to follow all of them. And I guess to me, it's just that they don't get into the child count.
And so these are families that opt their own children out. They're not going to private school through us. They just
Correct.
made that
Yeah, just
decision.
any private school, yeah.
Okay.
What happens if, just,
Including students who are homeschooled too, actually.
Yep.
Students who are homeschooled, we also evaluate.
right, if a child attends, whatever, St. John, St. Mary's, North Shore Christian, whatever, and they're on an IEP, what happens when they turn 18? Do they still are we responsible till 22?
So we continue to follow all the procedures, right? So we write an IEP, but if you never access your services, then,
Right.
I think we'd have to have the age of majority. too.
yeah.
Yeah,
But we
so
follow
we would
all
have
the,
to
we
follow
follow
that
all the
stuff.
procedures. Most of the time, not all the time, but like by high school, sometimes then families have said, the only way we can be done would be that they're like, please withdraw, I'm withdrawing my child from special education. I
Right.
don't want a meeting, and I need it in writing though, and then
Right.
we would pull them off. But sometimes people want to monitor their progress too. Like,
Right.
it's just from our perspective in terms of funding for the district, like they don't get into the child count.
Right, so we're not getting Chapter 70 money for
Correct.
that.
Interesting.
Could we get some data on that?
Well, we had 35 evals last year, all kids who didn't get into the count. So that's a lot.
35?
Yeah, you saw,
Between 30 and 35.
It's also,
that's meetings, that's
I
evaluations.
was going to say, what's a lot is teacher time and.
Yes.
and-
That's exactly it.
And,
So this is
no,
what we've been.
that's what they were talking
Yeah.
about in bargaining, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what it is right there.
Yeah.
That's a
And it
lot
must
of
be
teachers.
hard for teachers to put that
Right.
effort in
we rotate that around. We rotate, who would do those, but
So it's 35 kids. And what do we get per kid, chapter 70?
I don't know the answer to that.
You mean the foundation budget?
Yeah, what is it?
But we're not educating these
Yeah, but-
kids.
But I know that, but but it still costs.
But we still incur a cost.
Right.
But it's, it's the law, but I do think,
Let's
this
say
is where,
four teacher hours, right? So
Right.
for like 4 hours, even say $100 an hour,
Right.
it's $400 a kid,
Right.
whatever,
But if it's an evaluation, it's more than 4 teacher hours. I mean,
Yeah, right.
it's 4 teachers, 4 hours, 2-hour meeting, then maybe another meeting that year. But
I mean,
it would be nice, this is where the advocating to the state, we have these requirements, but it'd be nice if there was funding that came along, maybe we could show how many evaluations do we do of private school students, we would get some money towards that. That would be great.
That'd be,
I don't know if last year was especially high because it was really my first year in this
It was
position,
high.
but it was a lot last year. It has lessened this year.
But but it probably was a lot.
It was
because of
COVID.
the school, but it was also probably because of the school too.
I do think that
The request for the evals, though, was that kids went out during COVID, right? And yes, because we were probably some people chose private while we were in the midst of building the school. But they did request the evaluation, so. And it's for students who are homeschooled, too. So it's not just,
yeah. It'd be interesting to get some more stats on that.
Yeah.
And if you request it,
we do it.
you get it.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's a law.
Unfunded mandate,
Yes.
another one.
That's a big,
Again, that's another one.
that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just another talking point.
I was gonna say, it's another, if you just take 35 evaluations times however many hours that was,
Right.
and come up with a number, you say, this is another, $10,000 we have to eat.
Right.
Yeah.
In addition, which we do not have this issue, but let's say at school like St. John's Prep's in Danvers, right? So there's something called proportionate share. So a portion of the federal funding that comes in, so that's $600,000 that we get in. If I have any students in Swampscott, right now, we don't have any schools in Swampscott. So I only have to look at students who are homeschooled. Any students who are homeschooled, who actually we've evaluated, we know are eligible for services, I have to hold aside funding for them for services and work with that family to provide services. Again, not in the child count, but we take that money. So a school, it's not the same amount, it's a less amount, right? It's not anywhere near what you would have if you had the amount as an IEP student coming in. But, a school district like Danvers that has St. John's Prep, they have to hold aside money to serve, and that's not even from the town. These aren't students who live, they might be a student who lives in Swampscott. It doesn't matter. The school, it's anybody in that school, regardless of what town they come from, Danvers has to hold aside money to service any students
You
who are
have to make sure
eligible.
that no schools are built.
Yeah, exactly.
But it cuts into, we use our funding, right, to fund our out-of-district tuition, but it cuts into that.
Yeah.
Ours is not, it's nominal, but it is just something, again, this is the way the system works.
Right.
So-
Again, all of this would just be so fascinating during this summit that we're going to have.
Yeah, that people don't know some of this information. We talked about cohorts, but hey, I've got some great neighbors who've been helping out. Really excited for Sarah Kent to be here. We did put in, obviously Dr. Bacon was way on top of this as well, that we're really to focus our resources for our SOA plan is really to get a robust MTSS system. I'm a little worried about the cuts for Title I, but we're going to put our brain trust together and figure out how to do it anyway. We have also been receiving referrals from North Shore towns for in-district special education programs. That's great. This year,
What does that mean?
so if we have a program for instance, our Discovery Point program, we have capacity in it. Another district, Marblehead, Salem, Nahant will fund their student to come in and they pay us to have
In the
their
same way that we sometimes do.
Yes.
for them. Okay.
Yep.
Who sets those dollar amounts?
We keep it very similar to the collaborative,
Okay.
or in unique situations, we usually take our per pupil cost and then add in the circuit breaker special education cost on top of it. So
Okay.
it's fair. I mean, we make it, I work with Cheryl on that.
Okay, great.
On that
Thank you.
cost.
Just making sure.
The SCF money that we got, right? The Swampscott, well, I definitely have been using it. So these are things that people have been going to. We did a co-teaching PD, executive functioning PD, anxiety and school avoidance. We were able to send I think I sent 3 school psychs to a really great provider about school avoidant behavior so that they could then work, talk about different strategies, collaborative problem solving, Think Kids and Dr. Ross Green. We sent someone to that training. And then we've been sending teachers to Landmark offers some really good professional development, and we had, I think, 4 teachers take a 6-week course regarding teaching students with language-based learning disabilities, which is great. Like, Landmark does offer some really good professional development, and so that money I definitely have been partaking in for our staff. And our staff are eager learners, and they want to do it. So that's great. There's continued investment in our special education programs. We do have 2 new programs, and the students in our middle school named their program. It's called Lighthouse. It is a program. Our program descriptions actually are on our website, but this program is actually for students who need small group instruction, may have level 1 autism, or have neurological disabilities, and could be in full inclusion programs, but they really, that small group level to have more feedback and more spiral teaching is really kind of what they need. So I will say our middle school, told them it had to be ocean themed, and they came up with Lighthouse. So I'm really proud of that. That's a student name. And I will say the things also that have increased our costs, but also our how, our level of skill is all the research that's come out about how the brain learns, right? And so we really know that our instructional strategies really have to match, how we have a better understanding of what cognitive profiles are, what would work for that student. And we also have really sensitive assessments around dyslexia, but also around memory, around emotional disabilities, assessments that we never had before. If you 10 years, you could pull out one of our evaluations, it would be very thin, and as a school psych, like, we have everything now. We could,
even in 10 years, it's changed.
Oh, absolutely. Like, we can rival. In fact, I will say our assessments have been better than outside neuropsychs that I've received. And we have,
surprise me.
and we have we have every assessment. There really is no assessment we don't have. And our team is excellent at administering them. So, but that, again, that is improved what we can do, but there's a cost associated with it.
Right.
So
it's
exciting. It's an exciting time to be in our field.
Is that something that we should do in-house versus sending out?
It's rare. Parents sometimes will go and get their own neuropsych, maybe sometimes through insurance or at their own private pay. Occasionally, parents also have a right, if within 16 months of the evaluation that we gave, if they feel like it was not complete and comprehensive, they can ask us for an independent education evaluation at rate-setting fees. It's really hard to get rate-setting fees, but they can ask us for that. It's pretty rare that it happens, but it does happen a couple of times a year. And we have some people, I've worked with Children's Hospital. I've worked with the Lurie Center, and we will do that. But our evaluations are usually very comprehensive. That I think that's why we're not asked often for an independent education evaluation, because people are satisfied with the evaluation that we completed. I will say,
that saves us money.
Yes, I will say though, the sensitivity of our tool, the current research, when you think of dyslexia, there's something, is that 25% of people have dyslexia, but we certainly don't service 25%.
Right.
Because if we did, probably 40% now of kids would be on IEPs, right? But we can find it. And so that's hard. And that's why that MTSS system is really critical, because I can now evaluate and see that there is a minor issue. But if you don't have that tiered intervention in play, you end up with us, because yes, do you have a disability? Yes, I can see it in the evaluation. Could you benefit from some small intensive instruction that's not 3 years, for 3 years? Yes. But if you don't have that, you end up with us, right? So I do think that's something interesting that I've been really thinking about, because we are picking up more kids with SLD. Our assessments are good, right? But we're picking up kids maybe we would have picked up before. What does that mean? You know, and I'm trying to, that's why I think working with Sarah,
Why our numbers are higher, perhaps?
somewhat, yes. It's the law that we have to, the dyslexia screener came out, so we were screening even kindergartners with it, but without a real robust tiered evidence-based instructional model that we have, where we have staff doing it, you're gonna end up with us. So I think that's another high-profile area I really want to work with Sarah Kent.
I don't understand why, if you are saying you're seeing a disability, why aren't those kids automatically going on IEPs?
So it's whether you're making effective progress or not, too, right? So you can have a disability and maybe only need accommodations. That would be a 504 plan. But I could also have a disability, but I'm making effective school progress, and that often can happen, too.
But that gets you off the IEP.
You might not be.
Well, you might be a 504, you just might not be eligible. And when you think about it, like I said, if 25% of the,
No, I was just thinking as a parent.
Yeah.
If
It's
you
a hard conversation.
told a parent that, a lot of them would jump on the I mean.
Yes.
In this day and age, they would jump on the IEP because you think you're getting individualized attention,
Right.
right? So I can
Right.
see it would be hard to keep a parent from wanting.
100%.
to right away.
Right.
And 100%, and I am totally a believer in if I see something, we should intervene. But we don't have to intervene just through special education. We actually have tools. Our iReady tool has a dyslexia screener in it. It will flag kids as having potential risk for it. That doesn't mean we have to do an automatic referral. I already know there might be a problem. Intervene now.
They're doing well in school.
Well, maybe they're not even, but if I have a team that can come in with
Right.
evidence-based instruction to go in and work with that student, I might remedy it pretty quickly without all the constraints that we're under in special ed,
Right.
right?
Okay.
And that's a better way to do it. Also, it's quicker, right? For me, I got time and process on my side, right?
Well, everything seems better from an educator standpoint, right? But from a parent standpoint, I could see
Yeah.
where, I could see that
Yes.
pressure.
Oh, yeah.
No, I totally,
Like,
I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Discussion to not
Yeah.
get them, not get the,
Right.
to encourage the parent not to jump
I
on
mean,
the
as a,
IEP.
when I was offered services for my, like, I wanted as much as I could get.
Of course.
Because
Yeah.
Why not?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and there's the fear also when you're on from the parents that, well, they're doing so well because you're on,
Yeah.
and they're reluctant
Like, I
to
don't
come
wanna
off.
take
Right.
them
It's
off.
like, yeah, you want to see them fly, but,
Safety.
Right.
Yeah.
Really tough to get someone off.
Yeah, I mean, I just think these are new things that have come up,
Yeah.
right? We've got newer, great, these are assessments we weren't giving 10 years ago. We didn't even know. Right now, we've got these great tools, but we're finding things now. But it doesn't mean everybody would need an IEP,
Right.
right? But I get that. I totally agree with you. Like, if you're a parent and you see that, you're like, I want the intervention. So,
Do you think that this is some of the reason why you have people who complain about special education, saying, well, every kid these days has a special need for something, that because it's so sophisticated and it is identifying things that 10 years ago it didn't, that it makes it seem like it's bigger?
I think most of it's education, and that we're learning more and more about how the brain works and about what differences are in different people. I mean, I think, I just think we're learning more. And so, maybe we're going to find more things, and, and maybe someday everybody will be a special educator, and that would be awesome, right? Because we'll just know that some of these evidence-based instructional models work for everybody. So that might be a time where we move into, maybe not. I'm going to guess I'm going to retire out. That's not happening.
Then it's just education.
Yeah. So I'm very interested in that concept, but I do think we're finding out more. I mean, and we know that even mental health, we're finding out more, right? How the brain works. There's just more things we know.
Right.
Right. So
More tools.
more tools,
Right.
but and it makes us better at our jobs for sure. But it does change the structure.
Right.
I will say is what I would say. Let's see, where am I? Oh, questions. Anybody have questions for me? I do have one quick 1-minute video that is going to make you all smile at the end. But does anybody have any questions about anything? I kind of hope I hit on the trends, the things that I'm interested in. And I'm really, like I said, very excited about Sarah Kent starting.
Right.
I feel like she's my teammate. She that role, teaching and learning. you know, if we're doing a good job in our core instruction, like that's what we all need, right? But that definitely helps special education for sure. So I'm really excited about that.
So the one number that jumped out at me was the dropout number,
Yeah.
because that seems like over the last few years, it's been next to nothing.
Because that's the number of students with disability. So if you look at, you know, 180 kids, you know, it shows as
Okay.
1%. Now you're
So if
just
it's
looking
one
at it.
kid,
It's 2 kids. It's usually-
If it was 2, if there's 20 kids, 2 kids makes it 10%. That's why the percentage is higher. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, we want it not. We are
We'd love it to
really.
be 0.
I would like it to be 0 for sure. And we do. I've had kids graduate at like, you know, 21 who like, you know, took online classes, and we don't give up. I will say, you know, we don't.
Right.
We will keep I will keep working with anybody to try to get there for sure.
Great.
Anybody else? Any questions?
Actually, if you don't mind, I have 2 very quick ones.
Sure.
And one, you kind of just touched on it, so you made me think of it. So we talked about parent concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, if you had to say, hey, over the course of the year, these are the top 1 or 2, like thematically concerns I hear about from the parents
From
on special
families.
ed, is there anything, you know, you can speak to about that?
That's a good question. I do feel like it's very individualized. I will say, if you were going to ask me when families are upset, it's almost always over communication, right? If you're at, like, if that, you know, it's just, you know, where, you know, you got to pick up the phone. You also have to understand, you know, as a parent, you know, parents are going to come at this from an emotional, you know, place, which I think we have to really understand because it is emotional. So I would say that is one that usually when there's a misstep or someone's upset, it's communication, and usually, you know, we figure out how to remedy that. But I would say that's the primary. I know, Erin, do you think of? I think that to me is the hardest.
I think that we're talking a lot, and I feel like this is a positive, but about students, I'm feeling more of the conversations geared towards students gaining confidence and independence. And that is really what we want long-term. It's been really nice for me to work at the elementary school this year a little bit to help out with some meetings because I usually come at it from a high school lens. And even at the elementary school, I'm seeing a lot of parents really wanting to work together as a team with the school staff to increase independence and whereby confidence. And I think that that's a great goal, you know, throughout the course of your education.
All right, thank you for that. And just the other, I think I know the answer to this, but just for the benefit of those who may watch this, can you just speak briefly to any training that your team may take during the year? I'm assuming they go through some sort of periodic training, right?
Like the teachers or like the leadership team, like the team chairpersons, like that group,
Yeah, like
or anybody.
anybody kind of connected to special ed, so it's.
So I know I can kind of go back in my little other slide. I can talk it off the top of my head. One thing that we do in our group, which is the team chairpersons and Erin and myself, we actually go to a special education law review. It happens in October. It's excellent. They, attorneys who work in the field come in and tell us all of the cases that are like either before the BSEA or either settled. But it really helps point out like holes you might step into, and that's incredibly informative, so we are better at our job. This year, actually, with the new IEP, we invested in Alan Bloom, who is a provider and teacher who has been in Massachusetts, but he provides excellent instruction on writing IEPs, and he has a new app that he created where there are videos where you can watch them at your own self-pace. Everybody in the school district has access to that. I've watched all of them. I've learned to do things. I've been doing it 20 years, and I learned something new about writing a better IEP, so that is something also we've been doing. We also have job-alike programs, so once a month I go to the North Shore directors, meet with the other directors that are common to me, and we all go around and share concerns or issues and troubleshoot problems that we're having so that, we can have more brains attacking a problem. There's also a team chair job-alike group that people do as well. I think I said earlier that we had our, especially high school teachers, go to some training at Landmark through Landmark, not at Landmark, but through Landmark. It was a 6-week class on language-based disabilities. We had an executive functioning professional development this year. We had co-teaching professional development. We sent staff to workshops on collaborative problem solving with Dr. Ross Green. We also did Lynn Lyons school avoidant behaviors, which there was an elementary version and a high school version. We sent our school psychs to that so they can gain more knowledge base. We have a clinical psychologist who consults the district from Triumph Center. He's pre-K to 12. He follows the students and really is helpful for us, especially on diagnostics and troubleshooting when we are not quite sure how to solve a problem. But those are kind of some of the things. So we're really, I mean, especially in our field, like we have to stay on top of it. I mean, I'm a BCBA still. I keep that active. Like I have 32 hours I have to do per year around behavior, and a lot of it's around school-based. So we're all Erin's the same way. So we keep up our own professional development too.
Just to add one thing about the executive functioning, which I love the model that they did for this executive functioning, and it wasn't special education specific, but our own teachers, like a group of probably 10 teachers, went to a workshop led by Sarah Ward, who's like
the guru,
the guru of executive functioning. And then these teachers got paid to create professional development that they then taught other teachers in the district.
Great, that's
Because
awesome.
these are phenomenal teachers who work here and are now teaching their peers. And it was one of the best PDs I've ever been a part of. We're hoping to do it again next year, the same PD, and add more staff coming into it.
So it's not just special ed staff. It's
No, this is, I mean, basically the whole 3rd grade and 4th grade teaching teams at the elementary school attended that.
Wow.
They wanted to do it all together so that they could take some of the strategies and use it throughout their classrooms.
That's great.
So that was just something that we kind of piloted this year that, from my perspective, has been super successful. And I know there's been a lot of talk about how to grow PD in a positive and efficient and effective manner. Yeah. And I just think that's a really good example.
I do too.
And presenters, some of the presenters were general education teachers.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah.
And it's really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. All right, as always.
You watch my quick, you gotta watch my quick video.
Okay, yes.
Come on.
Go,
Yes, go.
Might have
go.
missed the whole thing.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if we can get the sound.
Oh, can you get it?
Can you hold, can you?
Oh, I put mine. Feedback. Well, you can watch it.
Send a link.
I love it, the signs.
You can watch it. It had some cute music to it too. But you can see these are the kids at the the integrated preschool science fair. And obviously students with disabilities and students without disabilities. And I want a big shout out to our parents who come in and lead and take give an experiment, like sit at a table and they run an experiment. So our teachers are with the kids, right, helping them participate, and our parents are leading the experiment. Anyway, it's super fun. I invite any of you, if you want to come to it one day. You can lead an experiment too, if you would like to, because it is really, really fun. But thank you, as always.
Thank you, Martha. Just to let you know, I am going to share this. I did invite the select board, the finance committee. I'm going to take your presentation and send it to them, and hopefully they will watch it. I think it's important that they do. Thank you very much.
Great.
Outstanding.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, back to you, Sarah.
At this time, I'm going to read the budget memo, budget memo from Superintendent Angelakis. We are grateful that the school district's budget was passed at Monday night's town meeting. However, as discussed during the meeting, we continue facing significant budgetary challenges due to future grant funding uncertainties. For example, we've already been notified of a $105,000 reduction to our Title I grant. Given these ongoing financial constraints, we remain committed to identifying areas of cost savings. The budget approved by the school committee is dynamic, and we recognize the necessity of being prepared to make adjustments as new information becomes available. We continuously analyze the budget from the spring through the early summer of the new fiscal year. This ongoing review allows us to integrate crucial information as it becomes available, particularly concerning factors such as enrollment projections, essential program requirements, and optimal program sizing for the upcoming school year. We make decisions based on this information. With that being said, the middle school is consolidating our Discovery Learning Center and the Learning Center programs. Due to program similarities and enrollment projections for the 2025-26 school year, the savings would be 1 teacher. Our Macy tutors work with our postgraduate students attending Salem State. We are looking at consolidating the role of 2 tutors for a reduction of a 0.3 tutor. The Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative, MACI, offers grants to college school partnerships to support eligible public school students with intellectual disabilities ages 18 to 22 to increase their academic and career success by being included in a college or university of community learners. And MECO co-directors. We're exploring eliminating and replacing both MECO co-director positions with 1 MECO director position. This is consistent with the model previously used by the district and would save more needed funding. And I'm sure we'll look at more things as well, as always.
Great, thank you.
Can we comment on that?
Absolutely.
I have a question about the MECO directors. So eliminating 1 and having 1 in charge, but we're still gonna have the auxiliary staff, like,
The tutor.
or more than 1 tutor. We have 3 schools. So I don't know, I mean, I don't see a cost savings there. I see a need to have adults, like, not decreased by 1 adult. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Like, I mean, you could get rid of 1 director and have 1 person in charge, like, I mean, I think that was the plan all along. But I don't think we should eliminate any staff in that program, especially, you know, we've made a commitment, or we've said it anyway, that it's an important program and it's something we want to grow. And we've talked about the capacity of the elementary school, and now would not be the time to decrease the commitment to that program. So it's hard for me to understand what the cost savings is here, because I don't see it here. I mean, maybe a few dollars in the salary, because it's maybe a lesser position, but just.
I think after speaking to the superintendent, please correct me, the thought process is taking the 2 co-directors and blending that into 1,
I hear.
which should be a budget savings of whatever, but
Well-
I don't think anything else is changing.
Well, no, because 2 into 1, then what's the other person doing? That other person still needs to be here, or another person in that role, so that we're not decreasing the number of people. There might be 1 larger salary and 1 smaller salary, but there's still 2 people. You know, we're not
Well, are
eliminating
there?
a person.
Yeah.
We're eliminating,
Is that true?
no, I'm just saying, I'm
There is a
asking,
third
I would
tutor.
like confirmation.
What was
I
that?
think-
There's a tutor.
There's a tutor. I don't think
There's
the
3
plan.
people right now.
Well,
Right.
we have 1 now.
There's 3 people.
So I guess the basic question is the staffing staying the same?
I think that they're just looking at restructuring. This current structure, I don't think is probably meeting the expectations of probably families.
I would.
Or what we're looking for, so it's probably restructuring. I mean, I think also it's probably connecting maybe with the families too, about, again, communication's the primary thing, that's the most important part of it, and helping bridge families being so far away.
Right.
I think the tutoring piece is important, but I do think we have supports and structures within Swampscott for all of our students. I really want to make sure that students are incorporated in those too. So,
Yeah, I mean, I would ask why, at the elementary school level, would there be a particular tutor for a
No,
particular
I
cohort of
don't
kids as
necessarily,
opposed to-
I don't necessarily think that's necessary, but I think there needs to be presence in every school for support, for teachers and for families, especially connecting the littles to start connecting them to the community, because we want them to stay for
Right.
12 years, right? So I think that there needs to be support in all the schools, and
Right.
and it might not be, I don't know what that looks like, but I know that the parents originally weren't happy with what happened with the directorship after Ms. O left, right? And they weren't happy with the 2 people, and not having a say in who was coming in. I think that communication piece fell apart a little bit. And then I think that it's hard to have 2 directors you know, because it's just, I mean.
Because it is.
It's a tough model.
It's a tough model, and I think that things fall through the cracks when that happens, right? So someone does need to be in charge, and there's enough to do. I mean, we've been trying to connect the Metco kids with this community, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know Rebecca's here, and she's done tons of work.
I know.
You know, trying to find, you know, family friends, and then work with kids, you know, to get to college and get scholarships and visit college and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done for these kids and all the kids, right? But I just am advocating for not losing a position. You know, maybe redefining some of their job descriptions, whatever. But I think that using the word tutor is tough, because you think of one thing. You just think of someone sitting there helping with academics, right? But there's a lot more about integration, and I mean, the clubs have been great, like all the SOCA and the Room of Color and all those, and all the specific clubs have been, it just takes more than one person to successfully run all that.
So then could I ask you to have the superintendent just to be ready at our next school committee meeting, if not sooner, just to send the school committee just an action plan?
I think I just want to hear what the model, what's the plan for MECO going forward,
Right.
and what's the model, or what's the intention for our program? I mean, we've been talking about growing it, so we have the capacity, and we've talked about how much more successful kids are when they start early and stay.
Right, and that's, we want them, right? We want them here for 12 years if they start.
But yeah.
Right.
Just
Rebecca, can I just ask you a question? I don't want to put you on the spot. How are you finding the communication? I know you're really involved in METCO. Are you finding or ask you to please be honest, how is the communication going? Has it been different this year? What are you finding?
What do you mean by communication?
So just communication between, you know, so you kind of know what's going on, you know, the students that you know intimately who come to your home. Are you made aware if there's any challenges, both from the parent point of view? Does anyone from the program reach out to you? Like, I don't even know how that works, actually. That's kind of what I'm asking.
So are you asking about my personal communication with the METCO co-directors?
Yeah, exactly. Like, are you satisfied with that? And how about other parents? Have you heard other parents who are, I'm not saying the right word.
I want to, I think you're putting her on the spot.
Okay.
And I think, can I speak? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot either.
But I feel like that wouldn't be a conversation that we have at school committee.
Okay.
That would be a conversation that administration would have.
Okay.
With a trusted source and with somebody who they know.
Okay. I don't disagree with you.
Because we should be aware of it, but we shouldn't be making the decisions around it.
Okay.
Can I just say this? I think originally, to your question before, the idea was that this could be a cost savings remedy, and it's just an idea right now, but we'll look into it. And I hear what you're saying about that you don't want to lose a position, so whether it's adding a tutor or whatever.
I mean, it's a cost savings if you're having one person.
Well, I think that was the original plan.
And a lower salaried second position.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a cost savings. It's not a $70,000 cost savings, but it's a cost savings. But I think that we need to, rather than slashing it and putting this on the table, I think this is something that needs some thought and some planning and some sort of a framework around what the program is supposed to look like and what it needs to look like and what we need. I mean, there's so many successful communities, METCO programs, and I think that ours needs to get beefed up to look like Brookline's or Wellesley's or something that where there's a little bit more integration or more families applying to those programs.
Room for growth.
Yeah,
We
you
could
actually-
We're the furthest away.
You actually read my mind. I was just going to ask Mr. Galishman to add to his list to just do a little bit of research to see what communities are successful, and
Right.
what those models
So
look like, so.
what I
Maybe
hear
we could
is-
meet with the PCO, Jason, like I could do that with you. We could meet with the PCO before the next school committee meeting and ask parents, but also meet with the current co-directors
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
say,
or
tell
longer
us what,
term. It's not like it has to.
tell us what worked well for you guys and tell us what your challenges were being too, right?
I-
'Cause they felt it.
Because I think what I'm hearing you say is that the discussions all along have been about the importance of Metco. So if we're looking to have cost savings, obviously, we don't want to have to cut anything. But this small program with this small budget wouldn't be, we'd like to stay further away from this than in it.
And yeah, and just from a personal perspective, I'm watching what Rebecca's done, and she's been able to make connections with quite a few of the kids. I mean, she has a kid that's a junior, right? And she's not gonna be here forever, although I'm sure she will work with these kids forever, but there needs to be, it's not a volunteer program, right? That needs to be, what's happening needs to be institutionalized. And I think that it would be an important conversation with the directors to understand what's happening with volunteers. I mean, there's a group of 4 or 5 people that meet with different kids that are juniors and seniors and help them think about colleges and writing, like using the model sort of like a mentoring, like the Girls Inc. mentoring model or whatever. There's things happening outside of what the co-directors are doing that seems to be creating a more robust program and also much better community relationships.
Right.
But I mean, I would argue the same thing is happening, for example, in the innovation pathways. That so
for
much
sure.
of that is dependent, the success of it is dependent on the relationships that happen in the community and what, you know.
Right, and we're not, and we've made a commitment not to cut those pathways, right? And I would argue this is another sort of, another group of students
Yeah.
that are here for,
I think bottom line, we shouldn't be cutting this.
we shouldn't cut it.
All right, so we'll just need some.
But I guess I would love to hear a plan, and I would hope that it was based on a successful,
Right.
another successful community, of sort
Right.
of like picking their brains about what's working and what their models look like and how they support their students and their families.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. All right, you're up.
Ms. Wolf, the athletic department budget.
Are you guys gonna pull it up or you want?
Yeah, pull it up if you like.
Awesome, thank you. While he's doing that, I just want to say, I think the tradition that you started with having the kids honor their favorite teacher or the most impactful teacher is a really great program. And we see senior nights at all the schools, and I think we're the only one that does it.
Yeah, there's, I don't know of any other schools that do it school-wide. I teach a coach's education class, and when I was teaching one of the classes, a baseball coach had mentioned it during the class that he just independently did it with his baseball seniors. That is phenomenal, but I wanted to take it to the next step and do it with all of our seniors.
Yeah, it's a nice tradition.
That's great.
All right,
Yep, just let me know when you want to advance.
go for it. So this first slide, these are expenditures or things that are variable. The big thing with athletics is things vary so much year to year, season to season. So these are all things that are variables that are not consistent year after year. So things such as increases in the cost of officials. You can see the difference there on the slide. It's going up between $5 and $7 between this year and next year per official. And we have about 460 officials for home games a year. That again, if we host a lot of state tournament games, you're going to see that number bump up as well. The yearly increase in bus fees, 320 buses a year. This year we're paying $382 a bus. Next year it's going up to $398 a bus. So again, if we make the postseason, you're talking more buses. We have coaches advancing on the pay scale. I just talked about tournament qualification and how much that can bump things up. Rental fees changing. So, we pay a fee to use the pool at the JCC for our swim program. We pay golf courses and driving ranges for our golf team. And those fees can all change from year to year, depending on what's going on there. The number of MSTCA track meets, that's the Mass Track Coaches Association, how many of those invitationals do our teams attend? And those invitationals are extremely important because they're opportunities for our student athletes to qualify for sectionals and states and all that other stuff. And they're running on super high level tracks where it's a little bit easier to qualify versus, these tracks are banked and all that stuff. Whereas if you look at our track upstairs, it's all flat, those sorts of things that come into play. Along those same lines, how many cheer competitions do our 2 cheer teams attend? Again, trying to qualify for regionals and so on and so forth. Cooperative team fees, which you'll see later on in the slideshow. Our athletic training contract, that goes up every single year with Mass General Brigham. And then obviously uniform rotations. Some teams' uniforms are going to be more expensive than others just because of number of players and so on and so forth. Moving on to income variables, it's always varies between how many participants do we have, so how many user fees are we bringing in. Sorry, I forgot to tell you to move. Number of students and families that meet the family cap. There's a whole slide on that too. It's not a ton, but there are some. How many students qualify for free or reduced lunch or are granted hardship waivers? We can also talk about the weather, which I really don't want to discuss this spring. But the better the weather, the more people that come out to football games or even basketball games, and the more we have in ticket sales. And along those same veins is team success. If the team is doing better, more people tend to want to come and watch, obviously outside of parents and so on and so forth. Next slide. So this is the structure of the user fees that we have this year. Obviously, we know next year's changing. And down the bottom is a rough estimate of what we brought in for both the high school and middle school, not taking into account family caps and or waivers and so on and so forth. So just so that you can have a basic idea of what the difference will be next year when it increases. John, we can head over to next year. So school year 25-26, with the increase, you can see the difference in the numbers and the fee revenue that will be coming in. And again, this is exclusive of any waivers or anything. And this is based on this year's participation numbers. So that could definitely vary as well. User fee exemption numbers, I did it by season. So you can see for the fall, there were 34 fees that were waived, 5 that were reduced. And just to go over how many fees are outstanding at this point from the fall, there are 12 outstanding. We've sent letters out to families. And middle of next week, we'll send a second letter. And then if that is not responded to, then it's a meeting with Cheryl and we decide where do we go from there to try to collect those fees. And then you can see the winter numbers. Fees waived were 28, reduced 1, family cap 1. So by the winter, family cap comes into play. The reason you might see the difference in fees waived is some of the student athletes who have their fees waived may not participate in the winter season, so that could make things very different.
Can I ask?
Absolutely.
A question? When do you start collecting, or when are users' fees supposed to be paid by? Like what point in the season?
So we ask for them in the beginning of the season, but we also have a very strong belief that we're not going to stop a student athlete from participating because of a fee. So we're continuously reaching out to families saying, just a reminder.
There's no point that you say you've played half the season. If you want to finish the season, you need to start making payments toward, or start maybe down payment towards paying the whole thing or something. I'm just wondering, because like once the season's over, there's really no incentive. I mean, I know we collect money to graduate, but we don't collect this money to graduate.
Right, well, prior to last year, user fees and uniforms that weren't turned in and/or paid were a senior obligation.
Oh, even the user fee, I know the uniforms were.
Yes, and we did recoup quite a bit. However, last year, I was told that we're not allowed to do that anymore.
I mean, that's a huge chunk to hit people up with at the end. That's why I'm just
Correct.
saying, like, if you're allowed to make a down payment across the whole, if you haven't paid by the time uniforms are coming out, you have to pay X number of dollars per week, or I mean, I think a lot of people probably could get their fee reduced, and I think they don't, because it's a hard thing, right?
Right.
Well, I mean, look, you can't go to the prom unless you have paid your annual class dues. And if you haven't, and all of a sudden it's the senior prom, you've got to write a really big check. And on like one hand, you want to feel bad that they're writing a really big check, but if you put it off in the same way that, like, to graduate, it's a hard balance, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bigger than a prom fee. Like, the $450 is tough, right? But also it could be $900 if there's two seasons, right? Yeah. So I'm advocating for, if we really are trying to collect this, we should really be setting up a payment plan for people earlier than later.
People have that option.
And it should be during the season, though, because once the season ends, the incentive, I mean, like,
Especially like in the spring, right?
like, I don't want to, you don't want to kick anyone off the team, or make it horrible for someone, but they can keep practicing, but they can't play games or something.
Right.
I mean, there has to be, it's horrible. I mean, it sounds horrible.
Yeah, I go back to, I completely understand where you're coming from, Suzanne, but I go back to, are we punishing the student athlete when it's their parent or guardian who's not paying? And I know, I'm a bleeding heart.
But I think there's also a conversation with the student, like, you know what, if you babysit or you shovel snow, if you give me $5 a week, that's gonna be enough. Or something. I mean, there's accountability. It sounds horrible, but it's not fair that some families that may or may not be able to afford it are paying it, and other families who may or may not be able to afford it are not.
So
And
I
it's
think the
hard to
question
set-
is, you get there earlier, that if it's not paid by one weekend, that's when the conversation happens.
Yeah,
It just happens sooner.
I think it just happens to set something up too, like, to understand, I mean.
Because you can't have a kid whose parents haven't paid sitting on the bench.
But you also can't have a kid whose parents could afford to pay that didn't pay. I mean,
Yep.
we don't know those things.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it happens that people can afford that don't pay just because they let it go, and people that can't afford that don't pay.
Those people who generally can afford to pay, but they let it go, usually they're the ones, they'll get the letter and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, completely slipped my mind, and boom, they're on it. We also find that a lot of the outstanding ones are people who, prior to lunches being free for everybody, qualified, and they don't
They haven't filled out the paperwork.
they don't read the information that's sent out for, whatever reason, and they don't fill out the paperwork, so we don't have the knowledge that they would have.
The beauty is, when you have this first conversation, you can say, you may or may not have filled this paperwork out. If you need it, here, you can fill it out today.
Yes, and that's in the letter.
Right? I mean, I'm.
I think it's a bigger conversation, because, we've talked a lot about fees in the last, few meetings, that, I agree that if a family can't afford to pay, it's not fair to anyone else who is paying. If that family needs some help, i.e. waived or reduced, they just have to fill out the form. And we'll, if we need to set a policy on that, we certainly can do that. But I think I'd like to have a little bit more in-depth conversation with Cheryl and, yourself about, how to just handle this. Because you're right, I don't want to punish a student athlete. There's no way. If they're, sometimes sports or any other extracurricular is the one thing.
Well, just these two seasons, 12 and 17, that's about 30, that's about $12,000. I mean, it adds up
quickly.
It's not chump change.
Right.
Yeah. But, and even if you only collected half of that, it's you know, you got 6,000 more,
Right.
right? And
Right.
I don't know. Just-
Of the
I mean,
unit.
Sorry, it's nothing
It definitely
like
sounds like, yeah, it definitely sounds like there's some more formality around a process of-
Yeah.
that's needed.
Right.
Can I just ask a quick question? This letter that goes out, does it require a follow-up meeting, or is it just a letter saying, this balance is outstanding, please pay it? Because it sounds like that communication piece about, you know, letting them know that there's, you know, these options that may not,
Yeah,
they may not know about because of this free lunch thing going, you know.
Send a check, either send a check or, you know, pay on Uniglow or Unigold or whatever, or come in for a meeting. You're,
Or
either,
call.
either, you know,
Yep.
come,
Or just do something.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
Any
think, I think
communication.
offering up the meeting is, you know, probably a good thing if they're willing to have that conversation.
so it is spelled out in the letter, and people are reminded that if they haven't filled out the free and reduced lunch form, that needs to
Right.
be the first step. And then it's spelled out further that if they don't qualify, but for whatever reason, they're still having a struggle, we have a hardship waiver form that is super simple to fill out, and then Cheryl actually meets with them, and they come to an understanding of whether the fee is waived, whether it's reduced to something, are they on weekly payments,
that
and
keeps
so
it-
on and
that
so
keeps
forth.
all the, like, everyday people out of it.
Correct, because one of the things I worry about, and, you know, Martha Seibert was the one that kind of tasked us with going after the fees. I'm trying really hard to build positive relationships with the parents and stuff, and when I become a
Right.
bill collector,
Well, and a
it's
coach
very,
doesn't-
very difficult.
Yeah, no, that definitely should not fall on, that should fall on the business office.
You know, so that's, and I will never, we don't even tell the coaches
Right.
Yeah, they
who
should-
owes
they
or
should.
who, because that's not, so for me to take it to the next step and say, if you don't pay by the next week, it's also hurting the rest of the team. If you have somebody who's an outstanding player and now all of a sudden we're yanking them and they're not playing in whatever. I understand both sides of it, and it's such a difficult position to be in.
I would imagine it's very hard for you to,
It is, because then I'm walking around a field and I see so-and-so that I just had to,
Right.
and it's difficult. I understand if it's part of my job, it's part of my job, but it is something that's,
so maybe there's a way to think about how there's, I don't know.
well,
Some-
I'm
something-
thinking about you, sort of in the precedent that you've set with calling all of the families before they come in, that the first call isn't a bad call. You know, that there's maybe some way to manage it that way, so that it isn't a form letter, that it is you know, we're concerned, or can we help you?
Human interaction.
I think we could maybe figure out a way to send a subtle, nice reminder
Or
to
like
start,
a nice
you know.
phone call before, like a
Yeah.
phone call, like, you know, our procedure is in 2 weeks, you're gonna get a letter.
Yes.
So we wanna
Don't
work
be
something
shocked.
out before
Right.
you get this letter.
Yes.
Right,
Some-
because
like
you're right.
something that,
I mean, it's a small number, thankfully. And I think, you know, maybe a phone call from, you know, whomever you would decide, just as a reminder, either how can we help you, or do you need a waiver form? We're happy to help with that waiver form.
yep.
Okay.
Yep,
Great.
and uniforms are a little easier.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm looking at past uniforms, and my spring coaches, I sent them an email. These student athletes are on your roster, they haven't turned in their uniform from the fall of the spring. They don't get, from the fall of the winter, they don't get a spring uniform until I
Right.
have those.
Right.
And they flowed,
Yeah.
I
you know? But
I
when
bet.
you're talking about money
Yeah.
and the
Different.
parent's
Yeah.
responsibility
Yeah.
versus the student's responsibility, it's
Right.
a little more difficult.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So this is just the spring numbers. You can see the increase in fees waived, reduced, and obviously the family cap jumps up because it's
Right.
the third season. This outstanding number is higher because we're still in the process of trying to collect those.
Okay.
So this is one that's really important. These are all costs that affect every single team. These costs are not figured into the per-team cost you're going to see in a few minutes, just so that you're aware. And you can see, some of them are only one-time costs. For example, the scoreboard in the gym, the 30-second clocks stopped working. We wouldn't be able to host games at all, but the system was so old, because it was from when the building was built, that it was obsolete, and we couldn't get the parts and stuff we needed. So we needed to replace that. and so on and so forth. You know, AED maintenance, obviously important. Field lights, we get billed for all the kilowatts that we use on the turf, on the baseball, on the softball field, that sort of stuff. The banners we put up for the kids. You know, we had to buy a new iPad for our online ticketing system. I did invest in a music subscription called Neptune Music, which gives every one of our teams the ability to download music on this app that I have an iPad for. It's everything literally from gospel music to rap and everything in between. And every single song is guaranteed to have no inappropriate lyrics or subject matter.
I was going to ask that question.
That's why I did it, because I have to tell you, when I'm meeting with
Yeah.
officials on one side of the
Yeah.
field and all of a sudden, you know, they swear to me it's clean and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I hear something and I'm sprinting across the field
I
to
know,
pull the
yesterday I
plug
was
on
like,
it.
is the song okay?
It's
That's money well spent.
it's crazy stressful. I know it doesn't sound like it should be, but it really is.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody knows about that,
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, I think
Like, as
that makes
as the
sense.
person who's sitting there with the mic.
Yes.
I had no idea.
It's brand new.
Okay.
And the other thing that's cool about it from a softball and baseball perspective is they have a whole section for walk-up songs. So every student they could all sit down as a team and select walk-up songs and stuff. So there's a lot of things that we'll be rolling out with that. So I think that's money well spent. Then we have our MIAA dues, Northeastern Conference dues. The Northeastern Conference dues are usually much higher. Well, they are much higher. They're almost $13,000 because they pay for all of our indoor and outdoor track officials. But I pulled that cost out and I put it in with the individual sports so that you'll have a little better view of that. Our Huddle subscription, which is our streaming and our coach's ability to get statistics on our student athletes, which is huge. Within 24 hours of a game, Huddle sends all the statistics, who had assists, who had goals or whatever, you know, for lacrosse, who got ground balls. I mean, it's really pretty cool. Weight room maintenance, 3 times a year, there's a company that comes in and certifies our weight room, makes sure none of the cables are about to break, everything's maintained for longevity and all that kind of stuff. And the widget for Google, there was really a want for our schedule on our schools to automatically populate to the school's Google Calendar for parents.
$55.
That makes sense.
Yeah. That may be changing, though, coming up, because our schools just got bought out by Arbiter, so it's doing this, so we'll have to wait and see when it rolls out what happens with that. But anyways, now we're going to get into the team expenditures.
Can I ask, with the field lights?
Next slide, please.
How do they monitor the field lights?
So it's an app. I have it on my phone. And when you go in, like if I wanted to turn the lights on at the turf, right? Once I select the field that I want it on, there's a drop-down menu that has every sport that uses it: youth soccer, youth lacrosse, high school soccer, high school football, high school lacrosse, high school field hockey, like and you select, and only myself and Gino Cresta have the ability to use the
So
app.
I would imagine it's pretty sophisticated there. What about at the baseball and softball
Same.
field?
So yesterday, while I was sitting there, because of the weather, I was like, it's starting to get a little too dark, and I thought it was cool if they got a chance to play under the lights. So I turned it on right from my phone. I just instead of it saying youth softball, because usually the lights don't come on until they do,
Yeah.
I adjusted the
And
times.
then does it go off when the
It's-
next, like the Little League comes in?
Yes, so Gino can schedule it all ahead of time.
Okay.
So it will say, like, for instance, I use the turf because we're on there so much. It'll say high school lacrosse is on there from dusk until 7 p.m., and then 7 to 9 is youth lacrosse or youth soccer. So it's all interwoven in there.
Right, and that's how we determine the electricity costs, what we pay, what versus a youth
town,
soccer will pay, a town will pay.
It's all the same cost for the lights. It's a straight up, whatever is charged to the town for
Yeah.
usage per kilowatt is passed on to all the different user groups.
Right, but it's divided up according
Correct.
to use.
Yep, and when we get the invoice in athletics, they actually break it down per sport for me.
Oh, great.
Wow.
It's not
Good.
just a total, it's a per sport light use.
Great.
So it's really, really nice to just be able to kind of look and see how it all works out.
Is that a giant bill?
It's not huge. It's less than $5,000 a year. So it's not awful. So first up, we have girls and boys soccer. So what I tried to do is put how many tournament games they played in. I noted if boosters pay for any of the coaches, because that kind of changes. You know, you can see the overall cost, but it takes out what the cost is per, that the school district is paying versus not.
So with the girls' soccer, the schools are paying $6,900 and the boosters are paying $2,300 for a total of $92. Am I reading that right?
No, I don't know where you are.
The girls'
Left-hand
soccer.
side.
Oh, you're talking
Left-hand
about
side,
just
the
coaches' salaries? Yes. So we have one coach that's paid for by boosters at $2,363. So the overall cost for those coaches is the $9,284.
So our budget is $6,900.
Correct,
Okay.
for those coaches. And that's all per the CBA.
And how do we make decisions about what teams pay for boosters, or is that later in the?
No, that's not later on. I don't necessarily make a decision. It is really up to the boosters if they want to donate. And the coaches have those conversations with the boosters. We'll have the conversations of, geez, I'd really love to have a coach in this position. This is why. And it really does vary sport to sport. Just the makeup of certain sports, you really like baseball, for instance. If you have somebody on your staff that can be devoted to being a pitching coach, for instance, it makes all the difference in the world. You know, so that's a big thing. Soccer, you talk about somebody who can be a goalie coach. Because most coaches that you have don't, unless they played that position by circumstance growing up, which isn't usually our luck, they don't have the level of knowledge that's so important to coach those specialty positions. So that's where something like this comes in. Did you have any other questions about girls and boys soccer? You can kind of see how much it is per participant.
Okay.
Okay. Next, please.
Wow, so, okay, I'm just looking at the cost per participant versus, okay, go ahead.
Okay. So next, we have field hockey, and I put field hockey and golf are just on the same page, just the way it worked out. So you can see the cost per officials. Golf does not have any officials. You can see the difference in buses, and part of that is that golf has less matches than what a field hockey has 10 buses regular season, because, oh no, I'm sorry, 9. They play 18 games. Equipment.
Does golf use a bus or the van?
Bus. They're too big for the van.
Yeah.
And we have to have a 7D, and our golf coach does not have that certification.
What's 7D, what does that mean?
7D licensed to transport pupils.
Oh, okay.
Game staff. Golf doesn't have any game staff required. Field hockey does. It's somebody that, the scoreboard, scorekeeper, that sort of stuff. But when you look at the difference with facilities, with golf, you're paying for the driving range, golf course, rental, for Kelly Greens, and so on and so forth. And then you can see the overall difference for cost per participant for both programs.
Is field hockey really 35 participants? I thought they were like 60. No?
Nope, 35. Okay. And we've been pretty level at that number.
Okay.
For a number of years. Our middle school program was pretty robust. But it was to the point that we weren't able to get kids onto the field for games and stuff like that because it was just too many. So now we had to cut back on the grade levels a little bit because we don't want to cut at the middle school level. I mean, that's just crazy. So any questions on that? No? All right, football, I know this is a big one. So cost of officials. Football has 6 officials per game, one of those being you have to have a certified clock operator. And then for JV, they have 3 officials. Buses, football, because of the equipment and the number of players on the team, you take 2 buses to every away game. And unlike other sports, the JV and the varsity game are played on separate days. They're not played on the same day, so you can't share those buses. The cost for coaches, I know it looks exorbitant sitting there. I want to explain that all of the coaching staff takes the coaches that are allowed by the CBA, and they divide up that amount. They do not get any money from boosters or anything else. They divide up what's given to them in the contract for their stipends. It's a choice that they make as a staff because they want to have specialty coaches for all the different positions and so on and so forth. Cost overall was $65,786, and that's without one-time equipment costs. So if you look at up top at equipment, we invested in Guardian caps for our student athletes, which are protective caps that go over their helmets that have been proven to cut down on concussion. So that was $925. That's not something we have to spend every single year. These caps will last us quite some time. We needed to get some new helmets. Helmets have a shelf life, and when they get sent out to get certified, if it's past their shelf life, they're automatically declined. They take the helmet apart and for some reason give me back all the pieces. But anyway, and you have to buy new ones. So we try to rotate through every year and replace what we need to. And we also last year had 2 kids who had rather large heads, and we had to purchase some extra large helmets. And then shoulder pads. We needed to replace some shoulder pads that also got decertified. So those one-time equipment costs were $10,509.
How often does that happen?
It varies year to year, but you're not going to have the Guardian caps, and you're not going to have as many shoulder pads. The problem is, most of the equipment was kind of bought at the same time. So what we try to do, especially with helmets are so expensive, is we rotate them. Good. So every year we buy a few, so that when they get decertified, we kind of got backups. And then we have 52 participants on the football team. So the cost per student athlete is $1,265, or it would be $1,063 without those one-time costs. They did play 3 playoff games and Thanksgiving at Fenway, which pushed up their bus costs quite a bit. And then if you go over to game day staff, in non-police game day staff, it was $3,515. Police details cost us $3,158.88, and that bumps up the total of the cost of the whole season to $66,773.88, and you can see the total cost without the one-time equipment costs. However, the football team and gate income brought in $30,363.77. So afterwards, you can see those numbers, and the cost per participant goes down to $809 without the one-time equipment costs, or $595 per participant without it, $809 with.
What do we charge for non-students to go to a game?
So it's $7 for an adult. It's $5 for a student or a senior citizen. This year, one of the things I want to do is institute a season ticket, where if you buy a season ticket, you get a game for free and a free fan T-shirt. That's what I'm hoping to do this year, to help to, just give people that option if they want. They can do that with our digital ticketing system.
How does that compare to other towns around us?
We are right on par.
Okay.
One of the big differences with us is Thanksgiving. A lot of towns will charge, let's say they do $10 a ticket for Thanksgiving. If you buy it in advance, if you buy it at the gate, they double it.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't do that. We have a flat cost across the board for that,
Okay.
so that makes a big difference. Okay, next slide.
Actually, can I ask a quick question here?
Of course.
I know on one of the previous slides, they talked about boosters.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any booster contribution reflected here?
There is not. Last year, the boosters did not contribute they've never contributed to coaches, but they didn't donate any team equipment or anything like that. Obviously, they do the banquet and that sort of thing. This year, we were informed that our headsets for our coaches were obsolete and can't be fixed. So the boosters are actually purchasing those for the team. So they will be contributing those, which is probably about $6,000 worth of headsets.
Are boosters making all the money in the snack shack?
No, that's youth football.
Oh, youth football.
Yeah, the town puts that out to bid every year,
Yeah.
and that's all youth football. The only thing our boosters do is the 50-50 raffle, which honestly does not
Right.
really make very much money at all.
So youth football makes profit for every game?
Yeah.
Like anytime it's open, it goes to youth football?
Right.
How come youth football?
Because that building is owned by the town, it's not school, that and the snack shack down at the baseball and softball fields, and it goes out to bid every year. Anybody can bid on it.
Like anyone can, you could bid on it, you could take your restaurant company and bid on it.
So,
And then you
so
pay,
youth football is bidding on it?
yep, and I will say that they've had it for I don't know how long, to be honest with you.
They have a system. and
50
they have
odd
some of
years.
them.
They've also purchased almost, I would venture to say, every piece of equipment that's in there.
Well, like I know, for example, that Little League does that with, up at the fields. But, you know, it just, when you think about that as a town asset, that, it's true, you have the bandwidth to get all the volunteers there, but it's, it feels uneven.
But it's town-owned, we have no say in the least.
Like the school, you know, Maureen Kellett could put a bid in for running.
Yeah, if she wanted to.
I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Like anyone can.
Right, and they'd have to go with the lowest bid.
I mean,
And there is a fee that the town gets of $1,500. If you win the bid, you have to pay $1,500 to,
Right, but it's a town thing,
Yeah.
it's not us.
yeah, it's not,
It feels lousy.
okay.
Especially when you think about developing feeder programs, then you have this really robust football feeder program. Because, you know, it's sort of like which came first, the chicken or the egg? And you don't for, I don't know, wrestling, or, you know, it just seems uneven.
I would just say that I don't think football has a robust feeder, like fewer and fewer kids are playing football now just because what we know about the injuries and
Yeah.
concussions and things like that. So
Flag
the
football
teams
is-
are,
Flag football is just exploding.
Yeah.
the teams are small,
Yep.
which
Again,
is,
I won't go
makes
back-
it actually more dangerous when you have less kids playing too.
Yeah, I will tell you, one of the biggest programs in town is youth lacrosse.
Right.
It is, you know, followed by
lacrosse is
soccer, you have Little League. Those programs are all much bigger than youth football.
So lacrosse has the opportunity to go in there and bid for that.
Anybody does.
Right, no other sport actually opens the snack shack though, right? Just football?
Sometimes.
Oh, really?
I have to say that youth football is fantastic with that. If we have like a special, like youth day
Yeah.
at youth soccer or
Right.
senior day or whatever, and somebody wants to use that, they'll come down and show you how to use it and say, just bring all your own food
Right.
and drink and have at it.
Great,
That has happened in the past on a
Good.
a bunch of occasions.
right. But
So-
again, we don't own it. We
Yep.
have no say.
And there's also the opportunity too, if any of the booster clubs, because that shack's only open during football games.
Right,
So if during a night soccer game or field hockey or lacrosse or softball, the
Right.
boosters wanted to set up some sort of a little snack table, much like the basketball boosters do.
right,
I would always welcome that.
right.
So, okay, next slide. Oh, there we go, we're up there. So volleyball and cross-country, you can take a peek at. Volleyball did have a one-time cost where we had to purchase a new net system, which is quite costly. The good news is it lasts for 10-plus years. So we have that. You can see the officials and the buses, coaches' salaries. The cost was $29,255, including the net system, $19,048 if we took the net system out. Our volleyball program has 3 levels. It's very popular. They had 46 participants. So you can see with the net system, it's $635.98 per participant. Without that one time, it's $414.09.
Great.
And they played in two playoff games. And then cross-country, you can see, cross-country really doesn't need officials. All they need is a starter. Deems Hatch, who lives here in town, volunteers to be their starter for almost every meet. There was one meet he couldn't be there, and we had to have a starter assigned, so that's that $132. Then you can see buses, invitationals were $600, coaches. You can see that the participation in cross-country isn't huge. I think that goes to our video game population, I don't know. Cost is $9,266, so it's $343.18 per participant. Unified. You can see the costs here for Unified. The officials they have a very short season comparatively. Buses were the most expensive thing, 16 participants, and so you can see it's $176.25 per participant.
Do kids in unified basketball pay the same
So
user fee?
No.
I didn't think so.
No. Up until this year, Special Olympics, because our program was new, was giving us a grant every year for $2,000, and that went away this year. So the conversation has to happen with Jason and Emily with what direction do we go with that. Obviously, it's not an exorbitant amount of money, and we have student athletes, well, so far, they've all been student athletes that volunteer to be partners
Yeah.
to our athletes. So how do we charge them a fee to,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
No.
It's very difficult, so that's kind of where I'm at with that right now, and it's the same with spring track. I mean, we had 2 unified track members who qualified for the states, and 6 partners, because the partners can do it too. So they're off to states next week.
That's really
And when you see the pictures that Emily sends me and how excited they come up to me and thank me because they get to wear a Swampscott uniform.
Right.
It is just
Will you
such.
share those out next time?
What's that?
Will you send that to us the next time?
Oh, absolutely. I have a bunch on my phone that I can email to all of you. They love it. And actually, we have one coach, we have a new volunteer coach this year who graduated from Emily Borden's program last year, and he participated in unified basketball and unified track, and he's now back as a coach.
Who is it?
Kelvin. And he
I love
is just over the moon, and he's phenomenal.
Oh, my God, I love it.
Phenomenal. So that program has just been, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And in basketball, a lot of times our girls' volleyball team, because they practice after their home games, will stay and be their little cheering section and stuff. It's very cool. So anyway, football cheering, obviously no officials. They have their own bus to all the away football games. We paid $500 in competition fees for them. The coaches, you can see the cost there, and the boosters did pay for an additional assistant coach because the program did grow a little bit this year, and they actually had enough players to have an official JV squad.
So is it $36.90 minus $816 that we're paying, or is it
So it's
36
overalls $36.90,
of which?
$816 was paid by boosters. So you can see the total cost for both, and that would have been $349.67 or $315.67, whether you're including the booster payment or not.
So when I just look at all these, it looks like it's about an average of 400 or so a team to cost. So
Per
we're like
participant.
covering, so that's our goal, right? Is
Right.
to cover
Unless-
half of it, and then the rest of it is all.
Is all those other
leisure,
equipment,
all those other
stipends and equipment.
leisure
I mean,
time.
volleyball's pretty expensive at $635.
Wait till you get to swim.
Oh, I can
Oh,
imagine.
we didn't, I thought we were done,
No.
sorry.
No, oh God, no.
Oh,
And 12 for football.
Oh, sorry, I was just looking at.
Yeah,
full.
I mean, football does drop quite a bit if you count the income that they have, and you'll see that on basketball as well. Middle school field hockey, we had 21 participants. You can see it all laid out there. It's pretty self-explanatory, 222.45. The middle school sports are less. They tend to play less games. Middle school cross-country especially is very inexpensive per participant because of the fact that you do not have officials. So that officials cost really does help a lot. And if you notice the participant rate for our middle school cross-country team,
My God.
holy macaroni.
Yeah.
I actually had to ask to add coaches outside of the CBA because I was like, we can't have 110 students and 2 coaches. That's not going to work well. So anyways, those are our 2 middle school programs that we have in the fall. Now we're into basketball in the winter season. You can see all the costs here. Cost per participant for basketball is $744.30. Officials are very expensive. Buses are very expensive. They play 20 games. Buying basketballs, you'd be surprised, but they're about $75, $80 a ball. We did have to buy new JV uniforms this year. We always try to pass them down every 4 years, but the ones that were getting passed down were completely unacceptable. I wouldn't have wanted them on one of my children. So we did end up getting new JV uniforms for the girls and freshman and JV for the boys, which you'll see. You can see the coaches' salaries in there, what the cost is. 27 participants, so you have your cost per participant. And then if you factor in game day staff, which again is the 30-second clock operator, the scoreboard operator, scorebook person, which is required by rule, you can see those. Girls brought in $3,121. So total income after they paid for their game day cost was $861 for a total cost of $19,235 after income, which brings it down to $712.41 per participant.
That's wild. That's one of the more expensive.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, next slide, please. Boys basketball is set up the same way I did girls. They do have boosters who pay for one coach, so you'll see the difference in those numbers there. The officials, obviously, they're very expensive. The boys did bring in more money, a little bit more money than the girls. Just a little, $7,000. But they're still up there at $737 and $652 per participant. So it is still up there. Indoor track, you can see the cost per participant for that. Was not a uniform year for them, which was very helpful because when we buy track uniforms, we're buying a lot of them because of the numbers. The big thing here is facility rentals. Every time you go to New Balance, it's over $1,500 to rent their facility. The track is phenomenal. Everything about the place is phenomenal, but it's expensive.
Right.
The Reggie now offers their track for free to all high schools. However, trying to get in there is very, very difficult. They do give our league one date a year, and then we try to wheel and deal to try to get a second one if we can. So that's really where you get that. And then the boosters do pay just a tiny bit towards coaches. The coaches divide up. And then just to bring one of the coaches up to kind of a palatable stipend for all they do, the boosters paid $646. So they're $272.26 per participant. But it does help that they have 109 people on the team, so that brings that per participant cost way down. And then if you want to move over to swim and dive, you can see the big cost there is the facility. We pay $5,600 for the pool. The equipment is very low at $170, buses, officials, but they're $1,016.47 per participant because there's only 15 people on the team.
Right.
Is that a consistent number?
Pretty
I was just
consistent.
gonna ask that,
Yes. It is. So, that's a big one. Basketball cheer. Our program in basketball cheer grew quite a bit this year, which was great to see. They don't have any equipment costs because the two cheer teams basically share everything. It's the same coaches for the most part, and they share uniforms, they share most everything. Their buses to their competitions and their invitationals were $1,528, $500 for invitationals, and then you see your coaches. So it's about $4,595 for the program, with 22 participants for $208.86. So we're hoping next year that we'll be to the point that they'll be able to have an official JV team that competes next year because it's grown so much. Middle school basketball, you can see the numbers here. The good thing about middle school basketball, the reason I combine them is they share all their expenses. They both ride on the same bus. They play back to back. Very little with equipment. The uniforms are very little. They use a reversible jersey, which is nice. You got one coach for each because the numbers are so small on the teams, because with basketball, you really don't want to have more than 15, because then the playing time becomes an issue and people are very unhappy about that. So it's about $122.28 per participant. Now, we're into the spring, so some of these things are going to be pending because we're not done yet, but we did take our best, we estimated based on past years. We don't know if they're going to go to the tournament, so the officials' costs could go up. Same with buses. Their equipment was $4,060 for the boys. The reason for that is we needed new helmets. The boosters paid for half the cost of the helmets, and we paid for the other half. So the helmets were really, right around $9,000, or $8,100, sorry. They did attend one preseason jamboree. You can see the coaches' salaries and the total cost, and they have 30 kids on the team for a cost of $767.53. And then girls lacrosse. Girls lacrosse does not have any kind of protective equipment besides goggles that they wear, which I think is bizarre, but that's just me. So you'll see that their costs are obviously going to be lower for their buses, plus the tournament is still pending. Officials, you'll notice that the girls' officials are higher, but the buses are lower than the boys, and that's because of number of home and away non-league games. So the girls had more home non-league games, so we paid for more officials, less buses.
Why does boys lacrosse get $2,500 more in coaching?
It's the step that they're on. The boys lacrosse coaches are on a higher step. And the other thing too is the girls did not want, or could not find, I should say, an assistant coach. So the girls have a varsity coach and a JV coach. The boys have the varsity, the assistant, and the JV coach. So they have an extra coach than what the girls have.
So even though the girls have more players?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And part of it was coaches' availability. It is so difficult finding coaches, especially in lacrosse.
Why would we have 3 coaches there instead of 2, like the girls have?
That's a good question. That's something that's in the contract.
In whose contract?
In the collective bargaining.
So the coaches are on steps as well? I thought that was a flat stipend.
No, they have 3 steps.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So the girls are $623.15 per participant. Boys and girls outdoor track, they do have some pay from boosters, not a lot, $546. It's the same thing as basically what we talked about in the winter. One thing that I just wanted to bring up, and I didn't put this on here because it technically wasn't this year, it was last year. We had to replace high jump pits, $11,000. The equipment, when you have to replace it for track, is pricey. So while we don't do it every year, when we have to do it, it's a hit. We're very careful now. We actually rent a pod every year to put them in because we were having some worries with mice, because we were finding evidence of mice, and if they eat those high jump mats, it's not going to be good. So we have been doing that. But you can see the per person cost without those one-time fees that I just talked about, $272.73 and $268.10 as of right now. So we'll see what happens if they continue to move on in states and regionals. Well, I should say sectionals and then states.
So I got a lot of feedback, not a lot, I got about 4 parents who called me specifically about girls and boys outdoor track, and especially the state of the track. We learned about it through them. Right. We didn't know that there was a problem with the track, which was, I was embarrassed. One of the parents, I thought, and I know that is maintained by the town.
Yeah, it's owned and maintained by the town.
But it was frustrating for us that we didn't know. This parent, I thought, had a really important point, which was that here's 118 kids paying the same amount as everybody else. Their costs per participant are really low, and we can't even provide them a track to run on.
So just to kind of put it in perspective, they are allowed to practice on it. It's lanes 5 and 6 that are extremely dangerous right now. So they practice every day up there. In a season, they would only have one home meet. So it's not like other sports where you're talking, you know, multiple home games and where home field advantage is really a big thing. It's not the case in outdoor track.
So we're not spending a ton on buses to any more, or particularly more on buses because
We're probably spending about $600 more on buses
Okay.
Than what we normally would. But
Well, I'm sorry, what is, and again, I agree with you, we got a bunch of email, and I know I got at least one phone call about it. What is, do you know the plan of I know it's the town-owned. What is the plan to rectify the situation?
so Max and I had a call with the company that I've been talking to, American Track and Field and Track. And they said, because we questioned, what about repairs? And he said the repairs would be extremely expensive, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he couldn't guarantee if they'd even last a year. Because the problem is that the asphalt underneath is broken and stuff, so the track's not sitting flat, the water's not draining appropriately. There's lots of problems that are at an engineering level. They are coming out the beginning of June. I could get you the exact date if you want, to meet with Max and Mark Noonan, who's the assistant town engineer, and he actually used to work for Gale, and Gale is another field and track company, so he really, this is kind of his wheelhouse. I am gonna go as well because I want to have the info, so to speak. And again, they're gonna go over it again with what they think the scope of the job would be and cost and all that sort of stuff. They said that the bottom line is that track is at the end of its life.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they're surprised that it lasted as long as they did, with
I
all
think
the
that
communities.
makes sense. I think, you know, I'm thinking about what you said during your presentation about what are the pinch points, and it oftentimes comes around communication. And I was embarrassed to be caught off guard like that. And even our business manager was like, I had never heard of this before. And I think that with, you know, 100 plus participants in every season, that those families also deserve some communication. I feel like if that, and maybe I'm just oversensitive here, but I feel like if that was the turf field, that people would know. And
It might have definitely been more of a conversation around town, for sure, I would think.
you know, and so it's hard not to feel like these kids, when there are, in some cases, 5 times, 6 times more than what's on any other team, that I feel like they're getting short shrift, to not even know what's happening and to just sort of show up and be told by their coach that their field has been condemned.
I understand that.
Could I actually just, and I want to dovetail on that. Is that soccer field used at all?
Yes, it is. It's our junior varsity soccer field for both boys and girls.
Right. So maybe how is the condition of the field? I haven't been up there in a while.
The field is in pretty decent condition.
Okay.
Youth lacrosse uses it, youth soccer uses it.
Somebody was at the select board the other day saying otherwise.
Yeah,
What do
that's
you
why we're asking, that they were actually saying, and it's
been
someone who
destroyed.
actually, who I don't consider this person up here, I consider them a real straight shooter.
Yeah.
And they were saying that the field condition is really challenged.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that when our JV teams played up there, I was getting feedback from other schools saying it's one of the better JV fields that they've played on in the league. Now, the way that the goal mouth is, specifically that area of the field, in August when we start to the end of the season, because the bulk of a lot of the games happen in that area, to the point that I've told my coaches, and my coaches know that during practice, I want them moving the nets.
Right.
So if you're doing a shooting drill, take the net and move it to a different area of the field,
Right.
so that you're not on that same area the whole time. Like a game, obviously, you have to be. But it was in fine condition. You know, that field's also used for our discus throwing and javelin throwing.
Right.
So, yes,
We had javelin.
yes.
Yeah, Russell did javelin way back.
and to choose for the, well, not use all for the high jump, but the edge of it. So yes, the field does get a lot of use. It gets treated very well by the town. That's something that's a field is a little more controllable as far as upkeep and taking care of it.
Right. Well, I mean, I just think, if you could just let us know after your meeting in June,
Happy to.
kind of where it all stands, because we definitely got, and I agree with Amy, I was a little embarrassed by it, just, I have no idea, I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, my apologies. I was going based on, this is a town-owned facility. I did bring it to their attention that, listen, it's in bad shape, and we need to do something about it. And that's when we had the meeting with American to say.
Great.
Yeah, I think in general, it's sort of a hard, it's a hard position to be in when like some things are school-owned, some things are town-owned, and there's always like this, look, Gino couldn't be an easier person to work with, and I know he's really responsive.
He's great.
And obviously Max works for both sides,
Yep,
which is
and
really
Max
helpful.
has been phenomenal as well, yeah, absolutely.
But I think that in general, we would all, there would be less irritation.
Mm-hmm.
If at the beginning of the season, it was just like, here's something that's coming out, especially when you've got 120 kids who are paying.
At the parent meeting at the beginning of the season, it was announced to everybody. Whether or not they felt that was a little late in the game, I can understand that, but it was explained and announced. And I think the big point I want to drive home is that we're talking one meet.
That's good to know.
Yes.
But
I understand.
Yeah.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
And it's somewhat difficult with town-owned, school-owned. You look at the turf field, the school owns the locker rooms, the town owns everything else. It's just, and it is what it is, but it's, it's a little bit.
How do other towns manage it? Do you know?
It depends town by town. One of the things is that we just don't have outdoor facilities on school property, so to speak.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's all on town property.
Right, because I remember on the capital improvement, I think it was $150,000 for the field house of improvements.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a town thing.
No, the
that's
field house is school.
Oh, well, they gave us $150,000.
Yeah, but I look at that, and I'm like,
That's really
okay, that's
school.
150,000, and we have a
It's the
condemned
only thing
field.
down there that's the school.
Really?
Yeah,
Would have thought that.
I know, it's different.
Anyways, yeah, just let us know what's.
Absolutely, I will let you know what the outcome. I know that it's on the capital plan for a couple of years down the road, whether or not that changes, but when we talked to him before, it was a little over $1 million.
Yeah, I bet it won't be cheap.
And part of my concern with spending that kind of money, not that it's a town thing, I get it, but that field is open 24/7.
Right.
I've been up there kicking people off that are riding bikes and skidding across the track, people running around the track in cleats. How do you maintain it?
Right.
It's
Even-
true. It's
Even
also-
walking up, you have to walk over the track to get to the field.
Right, and we did
We used to have that.
we put down the mat to walk across, and we communicate with youth lacrosse and youth soccer, but it's usually the siblings are running up
Right.
and down the track in cleats and everything else, and it's like,
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, like the field, these kinds of facilities are also part of like town pride.
Right.
And so I think it really kind of, people get angry when it's it's not like, it's not failing, it's failed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't.
In its defense, it is 20 years old.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
But,
that's
and it's
the
also,
hardest, right.
but remember that for a lot of the people who are talking about that was opened yesterday.
Oh, I,
Yes.
know.
Yeah, like
Yeah. The company really was
The
shocked
90s
that
was
we
a long
got the
time
amount
ago,
of years out of
Yeah,
that
I
track
bet.
that we did.
I bet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and Glenn, if I can just.
Of course.
I've done the heavy listening, and I appreciate all your comments as well. So, I also was very surprised at that meeting to find out. So, again, I kind of share, not to repeat what was said, but, kind of felt the same way.
Absolutely.
And, I think, maybe Amy, to add on to what you said, I think what you're saying is there's a constituency of consumers here who were kind of left out of the equation, and I can appreciate town, school, and that separation, but there was that constituency that really wasn't,
But also, we can't advocate for them, like, those are our kids, who the school committee is in charge of, you know, we're voted to advocate for them,
Yeah,
and we didn't
absolutely.
even know
Yeah, we didn't even.
enough to go, to be a part of the capital improvement process and to say, this is important, and to help identify what those, you know,
Yep.
so.
And I do apologize for
Yeah.
that. My assumption was that it was, you know, the town would take care of it. And the other thing too, when we met with them, we weren't expecting them to say,
$1 million.
or don't let anybody use tracks 5 and 6, or else you're risking injury and it's a
Is
huge
that labeled
liability.
up there?
Huh?
Is there signage up there?
Not that I've seen. I mean, you're talking competitively. If
Okay.
somebody's just jogging or somebody's walking the track, it's not.
Okay.
It's more of a competitive
Okay.
issue.
Right.
That's why,
It's like the steeplechase run where you have to jump over like these giant puddles. That's what you're practicing for.
Okay. Okay.
okay, if we can move on, John. Here we have middle school girls and boys outdoor track and unified track. And you can see that their costs are low. We have 76 participants on the outdoor track team. And that's because we actually put a cap on it, because last year we had so many that, again, we could not get them into a meet. And then unified track, I talked about before, they use all the high school equipment, so there's no equipment costs or anything like that. And this year we're up to 18 participants, which is great. It's the most participants that we've had since we started the program.
Great.
So, yeah. And then baseball and softball. You can see costs per participant. The softball costs are really high because of the low numbers. Tournament is still pending because I'm happy to say that it looks like we're going to qualify by the 500 rule, but we're qualifying. So officials, 1843 for softball, buses, 3438. Their equipment was 823. You can see the coaches' stipends there and the total cost.
But that also has booster donations.
No, it was refunded.
Okay, I don't think so.
For coaches?
Yeah.
Or it's in process because,
Maybe.
because it was approved by the union
Okay.
to pay that stipend out of the CBA. So please let me know if that
Okay.
refund hasn't come through. And then baseball, you can see, is $616.66 without the booster donation, and with it, they're $497.79.
So I know I'm gonna beat a dead horse here, but I look at the baseball coaches here, and they've got 53 kids on their team, and we're spending 20 grand in coaches. And we go to boys football, and we're spending $32,000 in coaching. And then we go to cheer, which has 22 girls, and it's $2,500 in coaching. It seems like such a, this is gonna be inflammatory. It seems really sexist. Especially when cheer is so dangerous. I know you and I have talked a lot about specialty coaching and how that's important for football, but, you know, cheer is like the most dangerous sport in the country. And it's wild to me that there's 22 girls and $2,500 in coaching.
So one of the things that I've said for probably my last 10 years here, honestly, is that I don't know how the coaching stipends came about back in the day, but they definitely need to be looked at. The cheer stipends are just so out of whack. The fact that we have coaches willing to coach for what those cheer stipends are is a miracle. I mean, you talk about, they have to get special stunting certifications and all that stuff. I mean, it's just, something needs to be done with those. I don't know what the answers are to it. I don't know, I have voiced this to, people before. It just, we need to look at that.
Remember when we were doing stipends last contract and we said, we'll do the teachers and then we'll deal with the coaches and that.
And it never happened.
It never happens. And I mean.
And here we are towards the end of it again,
Yeah.
and
Maybe that's something we could, you know how we're going back and forth right now? Maybe that's something that one of those issues that could be.
Can you can you give us, because Amy's right, and she's brought me over to her side about this.
Because I yap about it nonstop.
But you know what, you're not wrong. You know what I mean? I mean, you told me to go watch some videos. I watched some videos. I scared living daylights out of me. But can you give us just an understanding, because we don't know, like what, again, like towns, let's take the Northeast Conference, what are they paying their cheer coaches?
I can definitely,
To what we're paying, and then to Suzanne, your point, yeah, let's get this thing
we had this
done.
opportunity to
Right.
still have a
Yeah, we
little bit
should
of
take
back and forth,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like,
Because I have no idea. I
Yep.
can, you know, I'm comfortable with the baseball, I'm comfortable with the football. But I have no idea what a cheer coach means.
I can get, very easily, I can get from all of the other athletic directors in our league what, you know, what their pay scales look like.
Just, again, pie in the sky, let's say we're only paying 50% of what everyone else is earning. Well, we kick that up, we're gonna get better coaches, first of all. It's gonna be better for the student athletes.
Or not, but we'll have coaches who are paid appropriately.
Right, exactly, but I
Because
agree.
a lot of these coaches are coaching because it's a labor of love. None of them are doing this for money.
Right, but you still have to be paid.
That's true with any coach.
Right.
I mean, honestly,
Right.
they're
You still
they're
have to
not
be
making
paid.
money.
You still have to be paid at least in the ballpark.
Yes.
Of what your peers are making.
or what you're paying to get trained to be a
Correct.
coach.
Correct. So if you could let us know, just like, you know, what the Northeast, let's just take the Northeast Conference teams, or whoever we play against.
Yep.
Just to give us an idea, because we don't know.
Yeah, I'm happy
It
to
just
do
looks-
that.
It just
Right.
looks real.
And I would say, similar to the track, we need you to say, listen, this is a problem then.
Right.
That there's only one coach here and this is dangerous. And,
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to hear that. I mean, look, we've got a cheer dad sitting right here and he's never complained about it, but I don't want cheer parents to feel like their girls are getting short shrift, because in this case, they actually are.
Right, especially we have 3 coaches for softball, okay, for 17 kids.
Yeah.
And that was in the contract, right? Remember the MOU that I had to sign?
And I'm a baseball mom or a softball mom, and like, that's not fair.
Right, so, yeah, if we could get to that information, because that's something we can kind of deal with on our end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great,
I'll be happy to do that.
thank you.
So
go ahead.
quickly over to baseball. Baseball does have 3 levels. So you can see what's been spent on officials so far, but the tournament is still pending. And that's why their official fees are so much higher than softball. Softball's only got the varsity team. Baseball's got 3 levels. Same with buses. Equipment's a little bit higher because we had to purchase some catching gear for them. And they also, too, the 2 teams will share some of the indoor equipment, some of the batting tees and stuff like that. Baseball does get hats every year. I bought the softball team visors one year, and they didn't wear them. They said they were going to wear them, and they didn't wear them. So I said, I don't really want to waste the school's money if you're not going to actually wear them.
Yeah.
And they said, don't do it.
Yeah.
So I didn't. So that's where baseball's at, too, and what the differences are there. All right, tennis. You can see boys' tennis only has 13 participants versus girls that has 20. And you can see the difference in cost per participant as a result of that. Other than that, they're really pretty equal. They share the same facility, they have the same number of matches, same amount of tennis balls, and their coaches are on the same level on the salary scale.
Yeah, this is the first one I've seen where it's actually almost exactly the same.
Yep.
Like it looks right.
Yeah.
And so these are the co-ops I was talking to you about. So we co-op in gymnastics, girls ice hockey, and wrestling with Marblehead. Any student athlete who wants to participate on those teams registers with Marblehead and pays Marblehead's user fee. So Marblehead does not charge us anything because they're getting the user fee, which is very kind of them. Now, boys ice hockey this year was our first year in the co-op with Peabody and Saugus. Peabody funds their athletic department very differently, and their user fees are much less than what ours are. So they take the route where our student athletes register with us, and then at the end of the year, they take the total cost of the program and divide it by the number of participants that were in the whole program, and they get a per participant cost, and then we had 10 student athletes that played, so they charge us for all 10.
And how much do they pay? Do they pay the regular user fee? I can't remember.
Yes, ice hockey, everybody pays the same user fee here.
Oh, I thought for some reason that the hockey user fee
Not
was different.
anymore.
Not
No,
anymore.
it was like that, not anymore.
Yep. I will say that doing the co-op is much less expensive than when we had our own team.
Yeah, it's only, wow, I can't even believe it's down to 10.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, that's $1,800 a kid.
That's, the ice hockey and football are two sports that used to be robust in so many communities, and the numbers are just, they're plummeting. I mean, if you look at like Saugus, they were a hockey town through and through. They have less kids than we do. And part of it is, you know, hockey is now offering online schooling,
Right.
and you go to hockey practice at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
They also have residential programs where you can live there in
Same
the
thing with
dorms.
skiing now.
Yes.
So does it factor into your decision-making, or have you thought about over the years, you know, like, that it doesn't make sense to have particular sports? You know, as we look at cost-cutting, you know, and it's, obviously, you've seen all the craziness that's gone on this year and last year. You know, when we talk about cost-cutting, and we're talking about things hitting teachers directly, obviously, I don't want to take anything away from kids, but I also look at $1,800 a kid for 10 kids, and like, that's a lot of money.
So I have a
That's-
very different
that's
view of
teacher.
that. I do. I don't care if it's 2 kids. If it's 2 kids
I do.
who are doing something that they like, they love to do, it keeps them out of trouble, then I think we have to offer it. Now, am I disappointed with the cost? Yeah, I am. But ice hockey's always been the most expensive thing that we have.
Yeah.
Just for the
So if
sheer
somebody
equipment.
comes along, like, we had a presentation last year about having a girls' wrestling team. Can we just continue to add teams?
I think we should add whatever we can.
Well, but that's the point, is can,
Yeah,
and not will.
I
And
think we
so
should.
I think that's when we look at things and figure out what costs, how many people are, how many kids it benefits, because that's our role, is to do the best for the most.
Is that a question to the athletic director?
I think it's for all of us,
yeah.
because I think it's also, you know, similar to what we were just talking about with Metco. I think it speaks to
Priorities.
priorities.
So,
I
can I
could
say,
not
when we
disagree
talk
more.
about trying to keep kids in Swampscott and not going to private school, and I know that number looks low now, the 10, and I'm sure that not having hockey at Swampscott High has impacted some kids that decided, if we had hockey at Swampscott High, I'm sure we'd have a few more.
We know that. We had parents here talking about that.
But we,
when they-
but we didn't have the 16 or whatever, or 18 that it takes, because I sent a survey out in, what was that, December?
Yeah.
And 12 kids said that they would commit to Swampscott hockey if we had it back. So it's just interesting. But I will tell you, the 6th grade, I know, is jam-packed with hockey players.
So sometimes you have to keep it so that it's there when.
Comes
those
in
kids
waves.
get
So we're
Yeah.
gonna lose, and they take it seriously. There's a lot of kids in club hockey in the 6th grade. So say it's 20 kids, and that could be light. We'll lose all of them. And if we think one grade having,
I know you've talked about this, about the importance of maintaining a program, because it does, it goes in, it ebbs.
Yep, it ebbs and flows,
can't-
and there, you know, you do have many student athletes that the only reason they come to school is because of
Absolutely.
their sport. Then you have, for good, bad, or indifferent, parents that really do think that a certain sport might be their student athlete's ticket to college, whether it's financially or getting in or whatever. And if you're not gonna offer that sport, they're gonna go elsewhere, and we're going to lose all those students out of the district.
Can I also point out one other thing? How much is it for a sport?
It's 400 right now, going up to
Right, so
450 next year.
You had 10 participants, $400, $4,000. This is one of the sports we're actually making money.
Which one?
No, we're not.
No, we're not.
Yeah, it's,
No,
It's $1,700.
oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I thought it was, my math, I have 17,000, not 1,700. My apologies.
that's
Sorry.
okay.
No, we're making money
Sorry.
on the,
I mean, the hard
runners.
thing about this is that it's a co-op team, so if we have a lot of players in the middle school that are coming to the high school, and it's a co-op team, so Peabody, Saugus, and Swampscott are all trying out for it. Like, I mean, that's tough too for kids, because there's a chance that they won't make that team.
Yep.
Because
It becomes like a club team.
it's just, you know, there's a couple different things versus like having our own ice hockey team.
Right, well, that could happen if we had our own too. I mean, you can only carry so many. But I will tell you, with the Peabody ice hockey team, because of the co-op, we were able to have a junior varsity team. So a lot of our 8th graders and freshmen, because we allowed 8th graders to play, that otherwise, if we had our own team and we only had a varsity team, because we never would have had the numbers for a JV team, we haven't in a while, those freshmen and 8th graders would never have stepped foot on the ice and gotten any game experience. Now, with this opportunity with the JV program, they were practicing with the varsity at every practice and everything. Everybody practiced together, and they were getting to play in games, in JV games, which is phenomenal, again, for keeping them here and for player development, obviously.
I will say, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
This is something I didn't think of before when we were talking about trying to build the programs back up, and eventually if we could get the team back in Swampscott, is that, you know, say that 6th grade group, you're like, oh, there's enough people to have a varsity. Well, just for a safety concern, you don't want a hockey team of all freshmen,
Right.
you know, going against 18-year-olds. So
Right.
it's going to be trickier to bring back, even with the numbers coming in.
Well, so, you know, so maybe that feeds part of what my question is, like, you know, how much of it is wishful? How much of it is hanging on to the way that we've always done things?
Yep.
You know, like I said, there was somebody here who made a really great presentation last year advocating for girls' wrestling. I know that flag football is blowing up in this area.
Yeah.
Olympics.
So,
Yeah, that's definitely gonna have to probably be a sport at some point.
Well, it's not in the MIAA yet.
Oh, it's not in the MAA
No.
yet? Wow.
so, but
I think it's coming down the road, for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
you know, but I think that these are hard questions that I think we have to ask ourselves, because that's a lot of money. And I think it's a hard position to be in, to say, is that worth it? Because we know that we want to give every kid everything, but we're cutting things.
Or do you,
I mean, we're cutting things in in literally every other part of our district. And I just think that we have to take really sharp eyes to this, and it's not fun.
Well, maybe instead of cutting these other options though, like maybe hockey pays a bigger fee.
that's what I was gonna say, you take sports that cost there are districts that do that, you know, football, ice hockey, swim, you know, you look at the total cost for some of these things and you set a threshold. If it's more than this, then you pay
Yeah.
a little bit more. I would rather consider different options
Than ending it.
Yeah.
than ending a program, because I feel like if you completely end a program, you're never gonna get it back.
Yeah.
And then there's gonna always be a handful of Swampscott students in every grade that opt to go someplace else because they're passionate about a particular sport.
Would you do the research on that, about how other districts handle these particularly expensive sports?
Certainly.
I mean, look, obviously, nobody wants to cut it, but, you know, nobody wants to get rid of a teacher either.
Right.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Lots of good info.
Any questions for?
I think we covered it.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it. Thanks for staying so late.
Oh, no problem at all. I'm a night owl.
Joe, you still want to chat?
It's up to you guys.
Yeah. Sure.
We're almost at the end.
Are you gonna take that one?
Let's see if my students get a good shot of me. Thank you, guys. I'll be as quick as I can.
Looking at myself makes me realize how bad my posture is.
I don't really know, like,
Okay, so just an update on the auditorium and then a consideration. Start from beginning. So, as you guys know, there have been major upgrades. I do want to just point out the vision, because I think it's important to keep this in mind. And the vision from the beginning was to renew and upgrade the theater to provide school and town with a professional class facility with a long-term management and maintenance plan. As we're investing close to $1 million in this to redo it, I wanted to make sure that that stayed first and foremost. So just some kind of quick shots from the upgrade. They redid all the lights. They added a light pole. The place was closed for 2 weeks. They ripped out all the electronics, all of the dimmers for all the lights. They replaced it with all modern electronics. They're all LED now. All the audio was rewired. A lot of it's digital now. You can see they ripped out the entire back console, replaced it with all new sophisticated audio equipment. That's the old light board. That got ripped out, and we upgraded it to this, which is state-of-the-art. This is something that you'd find at the Huntington Theater. People that know how to run this. We had to hire someone to help the theater department who knew how to run this, because we didn't know how to run it. We moved from the conventional lightings to LEDs. We do have 5 moving lights, which we don't know how to use yet, but you'll see those soon. If anyone got to see the musical, the lighting was gorgeous. I mean,
So good.
just quickly about LEDs, we used to need 3 lights to make one color, because you'd have to put a red, a green, and a blue gel on 3 lights and then mix them to make the color you want. So now you take those 3 lights out, you put 1 light in, and that can do 1 million different colors just by
Yeah.
touching it. So
Probably not so hot.
part of and then they're not hot, exactly, and they don't run as inefficiently. So it's just some beautiful lighting design that we had someone come in and do and work with the students. We did receive the close to $200,000 incentive from National Grid, so that's all set. The audio upgrade, I don't know if anyone was at town meeting, but that was like, we were working on some of the feedback and stuff, but once we got people to put the mics close, the sound and the mics were fantastic. So what hasn't happened yet is the acoustical treatment. This is a little design of what it's going to look like. We've had to go back and forth with the acoustic designer. Max and I have been working with Emery Construction, and all that's being delivered as we speak to the middle school. Jason, you should see some big boxes there soon.
Yeah.
By mistake, it's coming over here.
You can bring it over.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you didn't see yet are the line arrays, which are the 2 lines of speakers on the left and right. So if you thought it sounded good at town meeting, it might have just been an emotional response, because what's really going to make it good are these speakers. And I'm only putting this here because it was a stroke of luck, I think, that the Roger Talkov, who's been the person helping us with this, was at a trade show in LA, and he called me. He's like, Joe, the speakers that I was about to order for you got end-of-lifed. So the ones that they're replacing them with are state-of-the-art, beautiful things that you need to have. So he's like, I'm going to cut that order. It just means you're not going to get these till August. But he said, you'll be the first place in the country to get them. And he said, you're the only high school that would have these. Like, no high school would have these speakers. So he's really excited about them. I'm really excited about them. There's some technical things that they do that are better than the ones that we were going to get. So I do, at some point, I want to really thank Roger for all of his work, because he's been passionate about this. He's excited about this. He was sitting in the middle of a town meeting, listening, coming back to me, talking to me about things he was hearing that he didn't know about. He's a fantastic guy. He's a class of '79 grad. These are also going to be installed in August, the cameras in the back, automatic cameras in the back. And LaTanya wanted to make sure that everyone knew that outside of my proposal, she's been working on projection and screen, and that got approved at town meeting. So there'll be a brand new projector that's almost 3 times as bright as the one that's in there. So we wouldn't have to turn the lights down for you to be able to see the projector anymore.
Great.
That's an important addition. And the screen will be bigger as well. So what's been finished? The stage has been refinished, the curtain's been replaced, infrastructure wiring, the microphones are in, audio infrastructure has been installed, lights have been installed, and we've received the National Grid grant. What hasn't been done yet is we actually have training on Tuesday. Cameras will be installed, speakers and acoustic paneling all in the summer, and projection screen in the summer. And then we have to figure out what our first premiere show is going to be. More to come on that. Things to consider, just the balance between school use, which is number 1, town use, cultural events, and then revenue is a bonus, but we don't want that to be the driving force. Things to consider are scheduling, repairs, upkeep, and storage. I have been in conversations already with Ms. Zotto around thinking about how to have an official production manager position, which could be a stipended thing, it could be an hourly thing, and I'm drafting that position so that the auditorium is managed by somebody. And then the final thing, as I was saying to Glenn, we should think about naming this something different. These were just some ideas that got axed by my kids. But the one that I want to suggest, and I know it's the school committee's purview to consider the name, is just Swampscott Auditorium. The reason why is because right now it's the Swampscott High School Auditorium, and if we are going to have, 1-2 acts a year that are a little bit higher end, if it's like, I don't know, Boston playing at the Swampscott High School Auditorium, it doesn't sound as good as Boston playing at the Swampscott Auditorium. So. That's my proposal. I just threw together a little logo design, but that's not the design. Any questions?
I think it's you and I had spoke about this a while.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. And, I was struck by, I was watching a replay of town meeting, is how lucky we are to have this amazing space in our midst. And I agree. I think I absolutely understand what you were saying, and I have no problem with naming it that. What does everyone think? Sorry.
Here we are.
I swear to God, I forgot.
3.5 hours.
So I think it's a great idea. I do think it's deserving of a name. I think, candidly, I think Swampscott Auditorium sounds a little too close to Swampscott High School Auditorium, and I like the ideas that you put up there on the previous. Selfishly, I think the opportunity, especially with the quality of what you've put in there, and if there's somebody who's managing it, the possibility of renting that out, I think really can come into play, in which case I think a more official name would be kind of sexy.
Swampscott Auditorium is partly because it'd be nice to get something done sooner. It doesn't mean we couldn't rename it later, but it's also kind of a nod to Lynn Auditorium, which is actually Lynn Memorial Auditorium.
Were your kids, your students involved in it at all?
No, I mean, I was talking about my own kids when I was around the dining room table. I was like, what do you guys think? I'm like, nah, that's stupid.
So it was like Enzo?
Yeah, like Enzo and Ella giving me feedback. It's an auditorium. It's not a theater. It's not just a theater. It's not a concert hall. It is something that does have a lot of meetings and has a lot of gatherings. So I feel like auditorium kind of still makes sense. And this would be, I always love creative names. So
I like the idea of Swampscott Auditorium because I like the word Swampscott in it for like the PR part of it.
Right.
But I also envision down the line, it's the Joe Dulett Swampscott Auditorium or something, if we're gonna get some money for naming it somehow.
That's true.
So the simpler the name is, the easier it is to let someone
edit it.
pay,
Right.
$250,000 to name it or something.
there could be a long conversation about that.
Yeah,
I think in the meantime.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Use kind of like a generic statement name,
Right.
so that you can
Name
add
it later.
Edit
a
it
donor
later,
name
yeah.
at some point.
Yeah, I
Right.
like your thinking.
Right, me too. John?
I'll be long gone.
Me too. Yeah.
I like Swampscott Auditorium also, and it's funny, I was thinking Lynn Auditorium when you put the slide up as well. Just a quick question, Amy, you asked about, other events going in there. Is this stipend person that you're considering, would that be one of their jobs to go out and find people to come in and rent out the space?
I'll be upfront. I'm really excited about managing the space.
Oh, good.
And that's why I'm trying to figure out how to identify it and quantify it, and then make sure if I do it, and if I don't, if I stop doing it, it's easy to put someone in the position. But
Good.
yeah, and I think that there's a relationship there with the town that also has to be identified, because it's it becomes a town event, and so how that works, the administration, the finances of all that needs to get worked
Right.
out. But yeah.
Okay. You go?
Yeah, I would say that I like the Swampscott Auditorium name, even if it is temporary, and then we get a different one, just because it has our town name, shows that we have a proper auditorium,
Right.
and that we could do really nice events in there. Plus, I like some of the upgrades that were happening. Even though I was a mic helper for some of our town members to speak in the mic at town meeting. But I love it.
You did say something about having a long-term or maintenance and facilities kind of plan for this. Is that something in the works too, like sort of?
Yeah,
like
Max and I are kind of working that out. I mean, like refinishing the stage every year, having like a
Right, like a-
theater inspection, safety
Right.
inspection.
Right,
like
keeping it fresh.
Yeah, keeping it.
depreciation of the equipment over, hopefully this is a 20-year investment.
Yeah.
So, but, we gotta have like some maintenance in there and things do break.
But your students, are they psyched?
They're psyched. I proposed a live sound engineering class for next year, which I think got approved, so I think.
Great.
we're
Can I
gonna
take it?
Train the
I know,
kids.
right?
Say, we should do it, too.
Train the kids to run
I
it.
mean, God, these kids are lucky.
know.
How amazing to go off to college with that opportunity.
With like
3 of them,
That
on the-
board was
speakers
really
that are
cool.
better.
what's that?
The board was really cool. I just went to a play at Wang,
Yeah,
same board.
yeah, it's,
Seriously?
the training that
Yeah.
we're getting on the 27th, actually 3 juniors are getting, it's a 4-hour training, and the three juniors are doing like an in-school field trip, and they don't have to go to their classes, and they're gonna be being trained by the person that designed the show for us, so they get 4 hours of board training with her, and then the staff as well,
So
so.
since you have an in with Ms. Mackey, I think we probably should upgrade information on our website about it.
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
Um,
But yeah, the goal is to really have the kids get a professional experience that they could take right into the workforce, if that's where they want
Right.
to go.
What's your thought?
I was just thinking about, we could really do something great for Step Up Night. Have parents for the first time come into the auditorium,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
blow them away. But I think it's great.
Come out with the spotlight on.
Yeah, exactly.
Only if you have like the ringmaster hat.
Right. So,
But honestly, when you do that program where you bring, is that step up when the kids from 8th grade come
Yes,
and
and
see
the-
what's going on?
yes.
And you convince them that
This is the place.
Right.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
it's
parents.
to be?
Right.
Like,
with the lights and the logos.
getting there.
and that- right.
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about this, especially having sat in
I
the.
have a walk-up song.
Yeah, especially with the Innovation Pathways that was presented today. Like, there's so much here that
Yes.
could mirror that.
Right.
Unfortunately, we get state money for that, and we don't necessarily for this, but maybe there's opportunity there.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, in so many levels, I
All
think.
right. So I think we're all in agreement. So even though I think we can take a vote. Or
Yeah,
can we-
I'll make a motion to accept Mr. Doulette's idea. No.
Wait, can I just ask you a question? We're taking a vote on the name?
Yeah.
Can we do that when it's not on?
I don't know, like,
You can wait, I mean, it's not.
I guess it's
I
our.
guess we could do it next.
I mean, it's our policy says that the school committee approves the
Mhm.
names. Yeah, I don't know, I think we should put it on the consent with the other 2 votes
Yeah.
we have to
All right.
take,
Okay, perfect.
just because.
Okay.
Yeah, no rush at all.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Absolutely, thank you.
Ms. Stella is not here, so the next thing we have is school committee chair. And before,
Can I make a motion to just table those 2 things right now? It's just getting
Sure.
late and,
I'm fine with that.
yeah.
Okay. Any thought, comment, or,
I didn't realize it was so late.
okay.
I'm making a motion to.
Adjourn?
No, yes, yes. No, that seems mean, for the people here that might want to make a comment.
Yeah.
But, no, my motion is to table A and B.
Okay, perfect. Can someone make a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Suzanne. Just really quickly from me about town meeting, and I know we said it really early today. None of what happened at town meeting could have happened without the 4 of you and myself. You guys were all, every step of the way, and I just want to say that I really appreciate it. We got some incredibly positive feedback, and it was just a great night. I always said it before. It's getting late, but it was a great night.
I want to add to that, if I can.
Absolutely.
I think that despite some of the way that this was painted, I'm really proud of the work that we did with the select board.
Mhm.
And the amount of communication that happened there.
Right.
And I look forward to all of us keeping that up. And, you know, I think it speaks really to the fact that these are boards, that they're not particular people.
Right.
And if you act as a board, you get more things accomplished. And I think we got a lot accomplished this year by doing that. So we just have to keep it up.
I think also I appreciate the finance committee too. I mean, I know what happened in the end and taking away that money, but I think that, that was perhaps a result of a board not acting like a board or,
Right.
or, I mean, I think that the finance committee did what they had to do.
Right.
And I think that we did what we had to do to stand up and get that money, but, I mean, I appreciate the pressure that the finance committee was in to sort of, bow to
Somebody.
Right. I also want to just.
Horses.
Right.
forces, but
Right.
also it is their responsibility.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
and if they're being told there's a healthcare pressure, even though we still haven't seen data about it, or we don't really understand, you know, you trust the people that are working for you, and that's what they had to do,
Right.
you know, in the absence of.
Right.
Well, and I think there were some really great comments made by other people in the audience.
Yep.
You know, when, you know, discussions about, you know, how at the end of the year, money does not come back to us if it's not spent the way that it does, you know, so
Right.
that it really.
There was definitely some
And,
looks on that.
and I thought it was very interesting, actually, the person who made the comment, I think it was Mr. Iannacone, about the fact that the town has always paid for these costs, so that it was sort of odd to make the distinction at this point, to make a change.
Right.
I thought that was interesting.
Right.
Hadn't thought about it.
Right, and I also want to just thank the finance committee. I mean, they are willing and have been willing to learn much more about how our budget works. And we continue those conversations, I think it'll be really great. Okay, so any subcommittee discussions? All right. I don't know if, is anyone online for public comment at this late hour?
Or in the room?
Yeah, so do online first.
Oh, there's a hand up.
There is, okay. Whoever your hand is up, can you please identify yourself and your address, please?
Hi, Rachel Daradash, 71 Middlesex Ave.
I'm sorry,
Thanks.
Rachel, hold on one sec. Sorry. It's getting late. My brain's kind of frozen
Write
here.
it down.
So just, Rachel, and I know you probably know this already, I'm just going to read this. If you have something to say to the school committee, in addition to emailing and calling us, we invite you to speak at our meeting. We do allow 15 minutes for public comment and allow each speaker 3 minutes. There is a time clock, and I will ask if you're going to please 3 minutes tonight. Please understand, we will listen, but will not immediately respond. We will never respond to personnel matters pertaining to any staff other than the superintendent, the only Swampscott Public School employee we oversee. Rachel, it's all you.
Hey, thank you. Hi. So, thanks. I wanted to first say that holding public comment at the end of the meeting sure makes it feel like you're not actually hoping that anybody comments, but I'm tenacious, and so here we are. I'm, again, here to ask you to please, please, please work with the parents who are losing their bus to figure out a way that is not school funded to provide bus service for the families that live on the other side of Paradise Road. I think we can work together and find something creative. I think families are willing to contribute. I've heard from families who live beyond the 2-mile distance who are guaranteed a bus, as well as families who live in the neighborhood of the new elementary school who have all said that they are willing to contribute if it means fewer cars on the road and more bus access for more students. So I think we can find a way to cover students who may need that cost covered, while also allowing parents who have the ability and the funds to do it to pay for the bus. Glenn, if Amy can bring you over to her side regarding coaching inequities, I'm confident eventually you will agree with me too, and you'll be on my side and agree that we can find a way and we can be a busing community, even though we've never been one before. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else? Mara, go ahead.
Hi, Mara. I'm tall for a change. Mara Lau, Outlook Road. So just a quick running record of a few different things. I'm going to start real quick with Martha's presentations are always information-packed, and I just always learn something, so I love listening to them, so thank you. And I think my biggest takeaway, there's always a bunch, but which is invest in early education or early EI, right? Little ones, right? Strong little ones build better experiences for our older ones. So going quickly, because I know Glenn will bark at me. So phone policy, thank you. I'm glad it got, I know it's taken a long time from September of 2023. It's kind of morphed, and I feel like it's become a better version of what it was other times. So for speaking specifically to the high school policy, I do think that, the data is out, the decisions are in that phones in our kids' hands throughout the day interrupt learning and create more problems than good. One of the biggest takeaways that I'm trying to remember, a data point was from, an NPR piece somewhere well over a year ago, which was it takes 20 minutes for a student to get back into learning mode when they've been, distracted by some type of notification or a look at the phone. So I think that that's a really important thing, and I don't think necessarily that the policy at the, at all the different levels, I think that the high school policy can be unique because, they're just using it so much more, and there's just not as much value in it as I think people want to try to convince others of. Thinking about teachers and the collective bargaining and things, I've said this other times, but I think I'm just going to keep, beating the same drum, which is that, comments in both progress reports and in our, quarterly reports from teachers are as important as the grades. And I just think that that's, they're not required to do it, and I think it's rather telling when you look back at some of the report cards of the teachers that make the efforts to do that. Most of them are just dropped down, except, of course, Mr. Natoli, and I'll get to him, because they're always personalized. And then, so the other thing with, back to Martha real quick, was that I kind of said, gee, this needs to be condensed and presented at select board. So Glenn, thank you that's a great idea, and I think that's really important. I think as many times as we push these important things that our schools are doing at select board, I think more eyes get on those events. Mr. Natoli, the presentation that Amy and I were at today was just fantastic, and if it doesn't make us realize that hands-on learning is like where it's all at, I just don't know how anybody could come away from that with anything else. The true line was the kids all gave presentations about at the beginning of their project, and at the beginning of their project, and then at the middle of their project, and at the middle of their project, and the beginning, like every one of them, it was different, so it was just, mistakes are okay. And I just thought that was just a real takeaway, and hopefully, more and more kids will be in that important program, and it will be beneficial. Okay, so just real quick.
Mara, one more minute.
Okay, yep. Mr. Dulett, great performance. Ms. Zipper had our 8th graders when they were are now seniors in 8th grade. She had them send letters, and they just came in the mail the other day. What a fantastic thing, and so just a great shout out to those teachers. Ms. Bowler's chorale concert 2 weeks ago was fantastic. And I'm just going to end on, okay, we've had 2 deaths or multiple deaths of young people in cars. And so I just want to impress that, make sure that we're having those conversations as we go forward, that it's part of our programming. And those conversations throughout high school are really important. I had 2 incidences with kids in my car where apparently seatbelts, I fear maybe seatbelts are becoming optional. And it was pretty shocking to me. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have no actions and votes. We already did this. So consent agenda. I'm sorry, my mind's a little frayed. Are we adding the auditorium to the consent agenda?
No, for next time.
Next time, thank you.
3 things next
Sorry.
time.
I'll
So,
make a motion to
yeah.
approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Regular session minutes from May
Great,
8th.
thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Someone please make a motion to adjourn.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
I'll make the motion.
All of us, we are, can someone, just vote yes.
I'll second it.
Thank you. See you later, everybody.
Oh my God, Glenn, you really cracked it hard.